All right.
I'll use that.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. Okay. All right. So I guess I have three sort of structures, three sort of things I want to go over in this conversation. The first is just my comments and your comments in respect to like the video, because my comments were about the video. Just see if there's any criticism or anything that we disagree with on that. And then I don't think that hopefully that doesn't take too long. I suspect you're not going to be really interested in that sort of part of the conversation. I think the part you're going to be more interested in the conversation is going to be the more broader conversation about clarity norms and clarification when asking for clarity or as it relates to NTT, that sort of thing. I think that's the sort of broader conversation you're going to be more interested in. So we'll have that. And then the third thing is to see if there's any way to resolve headaches about, different communities writing things or going people talking through middlemen and just try to bridge the telephone so that headaches like this don't happen and crosstalk doesn't happen, because I think a lot of that is happening, and it's annoying because I think a lot of things can be resolved, and it takes a lot longer for things to be resolved through that sort of crosstalk than through like a direct communication. So in terms,
I'm not too sure what you're even referring to there, so you'll have to let me know.
Sure, I will, and I will. Yeah, and I will. I'll let you know, but I'd like to talk about like they're really in order of importance what I listed. So if you prefer, I can just clarify that now, or if you want,
Go ahead, it's fine.
All right. Well, go ahead, clarify it now, or go ahead in terms of the.
Go through your list.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, in terms of my comments, first thing I want to make sure is if there's anything criticism in terms of my comments about the video, because I wrote a comment and then you replied saying, "I haven't watched this yet. I'm not defending Jack, but there's some odd things already in your response."
Right. I was forwarded the video. First I went and looked at the comments. I thought your comment was interesting, so I wanted to respond to that, and then I lost interest in the video.
All right.
So if you're saying anything about the video, I don't have.
You said it was odd, not interesting. But I just want to make sure if odd means like there's something wrong I said, or there's something like there's like a criticism about something I said about the video.
No, yeah, I wrote criticism, so.
Well, I don't know if they're criticisms of that. I don't know if they. Oh, so okay, so when you say you wrote criticisms about, you're saying you wrote criticisms about my comment as they pertain to the video, or are you talking about criticisms about the way NTT is written more is run more broadly? Because I think that my comment was about things that were said in the video, and I don't think they're really criticisms about my comment. Maybe you do, because like I can just go through this. Like, for example, even if you're asking for an exact point, it does seem like you're asking for some level of precision, and the absurdities paradox isn't just a criticism of exactness, but also illustrates that vagueness in language is just a standard feature. So the key thing here is, like, in the video, it seemed pretty clear that there was no, what was being attacked was that someone is asking for an exact level of precision. It wasn't that they had some broader point about the absurdities paradox. They were accusing someone about demanding clarity for a specific point, which wasn't. So I think my comment was.
So I could tell you how I read the comment and why I gave the broader response that I did. Maybe that will help.
No, I think I have an idea of why you did that. Because I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think you want to have a broader conversation about NTT, and there are certain people who are running NTT in certain ways that you have issues with.
Well, there's that, but I can tell you specifically about what your comment was.
Okay.
right? So you had things like, aha, you're asking me to solve the Sorites paradox. I can't tell you the exact point at which that happens, to which your response or your side's response seems to be, okay, well, I wasn't saying that the point I was asking for had to be exact either, right? Then I looked at that and I thought that, well, even if it's not asking for an exact spot, right? If this is your response, I don't think this response is strong enough because there's other problems than just exactness.
Okay, but do you think that's a criticism of what I said about the video? Because the reason
Well,
we
this
could
looks like
talk
a
about.
summary to me. It looks like you're posing what I assume Jack says, adding a clown emoji, and then giving the response that you think is a good enough
Well,
response.
no, in this case, it was a response. Even that was a response to someone, one of the other. I don't know if you can call them underlings or some individual. Well, the point here was that it wasn't just that they're saying it is. Well, I don't know exactly. They were making an accusation. The accusation was, well,
Yeah,
isn't that it is what you're doing? It is what you're doing. What you're doing is you're asking me for some exact point, and I can't give you that. And it is a fair response to say, no, I'm not asking you for exact point. Now there may be further issues other than exactness.
right.
Fine, but that wouldn't be a criticism of what I said. That would just be a further point one could make about uh, issues of uh, clarity and as it relates
Well,
to NTT.
yeah, I'm not saying you said something false.
Well, or a criticism of what I said more broadly.
Right.
I don't think it would be a criticism of what I said because I think what I said was on topic as it related to the content of the video.
I mean, I'm taking the statement more as, and you can say that this is wrong, but since I'm not asking you for an exact point, I'm not doing anything wrong,
Well, no,
right?
that's not. No. That wouldn't be what I'm saying. And no, I wouldn't expect. No, you could not ask for an exact point and still violate certain clarity norms. For example, so no, it depends on the context. In some cases, you could not ask for an exact point and still go against certain norms of asking in the way you ask for clarity. So that's not what I'm saying. The reason I'm saying what I'm saying here is that someone has made an accusation that.
Like community shit.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
listening to you.
So what I am saying is that someone has made an accusation that what was being done in this video is asking for an exact point, and yes, that deserves a clown emoji because that is not what is being done. I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong that was being done in the video because there wasn't an exact point that was being requested. There could be, or there may not be. But yes, if it was very clearly stated that that was not what was done, and in fact, um, a honest effort was made to the other party to provide some idea of what clarity they're even looking for, and it really was, and it was specifically saying, I'm asking you down to narrow it down a little bit. I'm not even asking for a lot or something like that. Now there's vagueness in that, but still some honest effort was made. And so yes, if the accusation being, well, I'm asking I can't tell you exactly where it is. You're asking me to tell me exactly where it is. Yes, that is very deserving of the clown emoji, and I don't think my comment there was whoever is, by the way, mods, if there's anyone just disturbing the conversation by doing things like that, just serve and mute them. So yeah, no, I don't think my comment was odd in any way. I think it was on point. I don't know what you mean by odd, but I think it was on point. I don't think it was anything wrong. Not just anything wrong I said, but I don't think it's really deserving of a criticism in the context of the video. I'm not sure what criticism that would be, because I'm just directly responding to what was done in the video. Now there may be certain, my comment is not like a broad thing about like, oh, this applies to NTT in every single context and every single runner. No, I mean, there are certain context where I could post something like this about an NTT crazy person who's running it in a very silly way, and it would be deserving of criticism, but it's just not this case. So that all being said, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I guess I'm finding that there's just a ton of cases where what I'm bringing up is relevant.
Yeah. In other words, you're saying you've experienced a lot of retarded vegans running NTT in that sort of way, or something. Yeah, yeah.
To prevent general retardation from people listening, I made a stage channel called A Stage. So I would recommend moving to that if you don't want people spamming in text or in VC.
Oh, okay, fine. So we can move to there so that other people can't just interrupt them, basically. Okay. We're moving to the stage.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. All right, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So no, I get that, and we'll talk about that, but that's really for the second part of the conversation about norms, about clarity norms, and what you've experienced and whatnot, and what would be appropriate in terms of like preventing that sort of thing. But I'm just talking about into the first part of the conversation. I'm just talking about my comment.
I get what you're saying. You want to say, a lot of this is contextualized for the video. I didn't watch the video, so I don't really get the context of it. I'm pulling stuff out definitely for conversation.
Right. But then so I'm trying to I understand. So my comments are about the video. You didn't watch the video. I'm trying my best to give you an idea of what was said in the video and to point out that based on what was said in the video, like my comments, I want to make sure that there's no disagreement about my comments as they relate to the video. Or, you could watch the video and you might find a disagreement later, and that's fine. Or you may just not be interested in watching the video and all that, and that's also fine. But then at the very least, provided that, the video is saying what I said, it's what I'm saying it says, then we don't have a disagreement in my comments as they respond to the video.
Well, I mean, your comments are open, right? I can interpret them a few ways. You're giving me a way to interpret.
Well, I'm providing you with provided the interpretation of my comment, which I'm dialing in. I'm not. I don't think you have a reason to believe I'm lying about it.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'm back.
Yeah. So
So you could tell me maybe like in regards to the video, what did you mean by what is the point of this cloud emoji?
Yeah. No, what is the point of this cloud emoji is just that the point was spelled out in the video, and to ask what the point of this after it was spelled out multiple times seems rather silly.
So it wasn't in relation to the sentence before? Can you just give me some idea of where they might be? Because that's what I assumed you wrote. What is the point of this?
Well, it has some relation to the sentence before. What the point of this, it was the point of that is giving someone some idea of where they might be is to provide some informative information about the other person's values, which was explicitly said in the video. So just ask then, what's the point of this, is worthy of a clown emoji on my view, because that was answered already. It was said.
Don't you think the question isn't just what do you want, but like, because that if you're saying that was stated, oh, I want to get this level of clarity or whatever, that the question might mean, well, what's the point of gaining that clarity? What are we going to do with that?
Well, I don't even know that it could be the case, but it's not clear to me that was the case because the other person doesn't really seem to be interested in meaningfully engaging with it. So someone could have that sort of meaning in terms when they ask what is the point of this, and by this they're not referring to, this refers to some other thing. So one, it's not clear to me that they were referring to that. It's not clear to me that they were really interested in meaningfully engaging in the video. But then I would also just say, like, okay, well, if that is what you mean, it might be worth being a bit more clear about that, at least. Like, what is the point of this? Meaning, well, if you want to get more clarity about my values to this degree, what's the point of that? What is the point of getting more clarity about my values to this degree?
Yeah,
but
I see that a lot of people asking that. People don't really have much of a response other than, mock.
well, it would also be interesting to because one of the points being made is that, well, it's just irreducibly normative. It's there's no further justifier. There's no further value. Well, someone could just say that as well. Like, this is just something I'm interested in. This is just something that isn't reduced further. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So yeah, I mean, look, the clown emoji, and I still think it is totally appropriate, is when someone is telling you, here's what I'm trying to do, here is the point, and the other person is seemingly not really engaging with them, not really listening to them, and then still asking what the point is after the other person is really making a good effort to try to say what the point is. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty shitty. It's pretty clown emoji worthy.
Well, I don't know. It depends on what he meant by it, I suppose. Like, if it's more what I was suggesting, then, or what I got out of it, then it makes more sense. But
Well,
again,
it makes sense
for Jack, I don't really care.
Well, no, but it is about Jack, because this is what my comments. So this is the point. Like, so for this first part of the conversation, it's important to, like, again, my comments are about this discussion in the video with Jack.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still saying I don't know what Jack meant.
Right, you may not. Okay, fine. If you say you don't know if you have a criticism of things I've said, that's totally fine. I'm fine with that because you haven't watched the video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I can try to tell you, so number one, it's not clear to me which side he meant, and number two, even if he did mean that other thing, it's like, oh, what's the point of you getting some further clarification of my values? I also think that's a bit of a, that would be a bit silly. In other words, one thing is you should ask that, not just say, what's the point of this? What's the point? And what's the point of this? Actually, let me just put some context in from the video, because I actually do think there's reasons. I'll say something even stronger. I do think there's actually reasons to believe he did mean the former rather than the latter, because he started saying, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to give what's the point of this? You want me to give a laundry list of animals? So he seems to be talking about the actual iterative process, that process of providing some meaningful answer to NTT, rather than that meta question of, okay, well, what's the point of this being getting further information about my value? So I'll make a stronger point. It says there actually is some evidence to suggest that he did mean the even more silly thing. But even if he meant some other things, such as, okay, well, what's the point of you getting some more information about my values? Number one, I think it would be, one would want to dial that in, say, okay, what's the point of getting more information about my values? Not what the point of this is after we're talking about this, meaning the thing we're talking about throughout the entire conversation, essentially. I didn't get any indication otherwise that that's what was meant. So, and then number two, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of points. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people are interested in getting more information about other people's values. And, you could ask what the point of that is. But,
I mean, NTT does it in a very specific way and to a very high granularity. I mean,
well, not necessarily. Well, in your
the same as I'm just getting some values out of you.
Well, at least. Well, wait a minute. Hold on, because NTT does that in certain contexts when certain people are running it. Sure, it doesn't necessarily do that. It could be a very vague ask. It could be very granular ask. Depends on who's doing that. So again,
but it's still a particular way of going about it, right?
yeah, no, it is a particular way of going about it. And if someone were to say, okay, look, what is the point of going?
I'm just trying to say that saying some people have interest in getting values of other people isn't the same as questioning what's the point of NTT.
Well, the point, but that was already specified. If someone would, now you're going back to what's the point of this, you running it as NTT, because that point was already dialed in. Because like then we're back to the original reason I put the clown emoji in, which is
no. I'm talking on the same meta level of like, what are we going to do with the NTT answers, right?
Well,
and you want to say that the answer of that is some people are interested in other people's values, right? You want to pose that as the answer to the meta question.
Yes.
But I'm saying that that's a very broad thing to say, and that people are only interested in other people's values in some contexts, not in all contexts.
Okay, and it seems like this was the context that person was interested in the other person's values. Like the context was they specifically said they want them to narrow it down a little. So it seems like all of that was already answered. And if someone were to ask what's the point of that, that's the thing they want to do. They're interested in knowing it.
The original answer. That's the original answer you gave for it, right? That's not the answer to the meta question of what we're gonna do with it.
Oh, what they're gonna do with it is just to is what they're going to do.
Say, oh, I'm not doing anything more.
Yeah, they can say,
getting information about your values.
Yes, one can say, and it seems like that's all they have said, but I don't see anything wrong with that. They said, okay, one can say they're just getting nothing further from that. Like, but that is an answer. That is.
It's an answer, of course.
Yeah.
You can give all sorts of answers. I'm making a recipe, right? We don't have to respect all answers.
Right, but so
right, because the answer to that is there's nothing further can just be responded with, I'm not really interested in that. That doesn't seem
fine.
like
No, but that's fine. Then instead of asking what the point of this is, because that's already been answered, because I do take it that was answered. Like I take it that on those levels it was answered. Now,
right. Well, okay. So there's a difference between saying I want to know what your values is, and this will go nowhere else, right? Like I don't know the latter from the former.
Well, what was said was, I just want you. It wasn't just narrow it down a little for me. It was, I just want you to narrow it down a little. The just was there. So
that's fine. But then it's like, okay, for what? And you can say for nothing else other than me knowing.
Yes, right? He says, I just want to know. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the latter is not inferable from the former.
I understand, but I think both were. But I understand that, but it seems like both were indicated in the conversation.
I don't know. Maybe. Okay. That's all I want and nothing else.
Yeah, and that it's the word "just" was there. That's my interpretation. I just want you. It's not narrow it down for me. I just want you to narrow it down for me. But anyway, I mean, the point, regardless of all of that, it didn't even seem like the meta thing was even what was being asked for. So we can, Steelman Jack to some kind of, whatever toxically charitable degree, we could do that. Sure. But I think in the video that even that is being a little bit too charitable, I think. But even if we are, I mean, just say if any of these points are about, okay, well, I'm not interested in providing you with an insight, with that sort of insight to my values, or I don't think this line of questioning is a good way of providing its insight to the values. Just say that and be done. Well, just do that, and then don't ask what the point of it after it is, because it's clear what the point is. that the other person in this conversation has tried many times in between being server muted, by the way, many times, and has been making a very good effort to, on many levels, to just say what the point is. And so I don't get the skepticism. I don't get this what the point is. This person, I mean, you may have it's fine if you have a different experience with other vegans who may be more may act differently than that, but this person was coming in very good faith. They were trying to be very clear about what their goals were. And yeah, I just don't. It's worth on both of those levels. I think they have definitely on the first level. On the second level, I think they've given indications of what of that as well.
Well, I'll grant you the first level. I mean, if that's what the question was, then I agree with you. On the second, I have no idea. Like,
yeah.
Now I don't even want to watch the video to find out, and I don't care enough.
Right. Yeah. Now
I either do have a criticism of you, or I don't,
or you're not sure. If your view is you're not sure, you have a criticism of anything in my comments, that's a fine answer as well.
Yeah. No, that's probably where I am. If you're telling me that this is what happened, I read it a particular way, and I responded assuming that particular way.
Well, look, there's general things. Yeah. Now, look, I'll just tell you, like, there's general things that someone running NTT might want to do with that. They may want to either get to a point where they can show that someone's answer is like a little silly or at odds with something, so they may have that, like, what to do with it, or they may want to show that in your case, you may be running into a number of them who may want to exploit lack of clarity as a rhetorical tool. They may want to do that with it. There's all sorts of things that you may run into. But in this case, I think none of that really was, I don't think any, the lack of clarity exploitation was at play here. I don't think, and I think, I think the person was very upfront about their, what to do with that would be. So, right. Okay. So, yeah, and then what level of precision that was made a good effort to try to specify in the video. They said, I just want you to narrow it down a little. Very little difference between asking for exact point and continually asking for precision and only being satisfied if exactness is given. Sure, but that wasn't what was being done in the video, and it was explicitly said otherwise. If you're willing to accept vaguity, what amount? An attempt was made in the video to dial that in as well. So, like, all of these things, like, that you're responding to my comments, like, I guess the issue is in the video, like, those things are already, like, answered. Like, this person honestly went above and beyond. I think they actually went above and beyond to, like, do all of, like, to try and cover all the considerations you're actually mentioning here.
Mm-hmm.
At least from my reading. Like, so, yeah. So, okay. So are we on the same page on the first part of the conversation? Like, do you currently think that there's, like, as my comments pertain to the video, that there's a criticism that you have on my comments?
Well, I guess we don't know.
So you're not taking a position that you have a criticism on my comments?
No, I'm not.
You don't know, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. Cool. Great. All right. Now, so we've resolved that part of the conversation. And the next, I think part of the conversation you're more interested in is the part of the conversation that in terms of norms of clarity. Okay.
Because that's just, I'm constantly dealing with the NTTers out in the field. And generally, you will always get the sense, well, at least I do, or people outside of this community will, is that the idea is to run it until you can make the person look stupid, right? And so it's not like a level.
Some individuals will do that, sure.
Sure, right? So it's just you continuously ask for more clarity until you get them to say something stupid, right? So when does the question stop? Well, when I make you look bad.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's not not how the norms are here. Like it could very well be that someone just gives I haven't really heard a very satisfactory answer, but it could very well be that I just get a satisfactory answer and just like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or it could very well be that, you know,
I don't think I've ever seen an NTT asker be satisfied.
no, that's fine. No, wait, that's fine. They may not be satisfied, but they may be coming in with it with that goal being open. Like, it's a difference between someone happenstance not being satisfied, but not coming in with the goal of I'm just going
to be nice to see it once in order to know that that is the goal and that.
Well, it would be nice, but it doesn't mean.
Airs.
Wait, but hold on. I understand it might be nice, but that doesn't mean that if they aren't satisfied, that they're coming in with the goal just to ask for more.
By necessity, it is.
Right.
But
so I'm just.
If you're trying to come up with evidence of what the heck people are actually doing with it.
I can give you evidence. Yeah, no, I can give you evidence. I mean, look, there's engagements that I've had about NTT where I don't try to make the person look stupid. I just say, hey, listen, like, I don't think this accurately reflects your values. Like, I think, if you reflected on it, I think that's not really the sort of thing you're trying to say or that you're getting at. And if you were so.
Okay, so you were broadly speaking of your community, right? And you're one of the few people in this community that I interact with. Right? And that's generally because I think I get good conversations out of you. But the community at large, I don't think I'm going to characterize the same way I characterize you.
Well, I don't know what you mean by. So I'm not sure what you mean by community. How, like, what's going into that set? You may just have a certain type of experience with vegans who are just, running this in a very bad faith, retarded way.
What you talking about the community? Because you used that term before I did.
Well, I can tell you what I mean. If I did, I'm not. Maybe I did. Community. I guess I could talk about. In this case, we could talk about study archive members or people I'm close with in study archives, or we can talk about vegans broadly. So when I say,
I'm thinking study archives and your related servers that are very close.
Okay, so that are close, meaning I like, it's like a name that I would recognize, and that's so. If that's the case, I don't really think. Maybe this is just an empirical issue. I could be wrong about. I could be right about, but I don't think that the goal there, neither when I do it or when Isaac does it or when someone else I would like recognize does it, is just you just ask for more clarity until you make the other person say something stupid. I don't think that's what is being done if we limit the set to that. I think there are certainly a lot of vegans who run NTT like that, who I would look at and be like, okay, well, this is really cringy. Why are you doing this? Why are you running NTT like that? But that's not the norms I try to set. That's not how I operate, and that's not how I see my community in that set dialed in doing it. But right. You might have a.
If we talk about the community as in members of this server and like Ask Yourself server and other servers, just that whole set, which is probably more people than your inner circle.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Then I'm more. Then I'm more agnostic on the matter. I still have not seeing reason to believe that. Yeah, because they're in broader, less related to me closely, I'm going to have more uncertainty about that answer. I don't see a reason to believe they're the majority of that are running it in that sort of way, but that certainly would surprise me less. And now here's
I get someone from the server running it. Yeah. This would be my there are sorts of motivations.
Yeah, no, I understand
that expression. When you talk about your inner circle, right? And I don't exactly know who's in it.
Wait, just 1 second. Just let me just make a quick point. what I do believe is that the people, the subset of people that you end up interacting with may very well be doing that. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think that there may be a selection bias there.
Who's biased? Me?
No, a selection bias.
In what way?
So, like, you know what I mean by selection bias? You mean like it's like a statistical thing? So, the type of people from these communities that end up going to your community to or your circle or a means of interacting with you might have certain motivations that lead them to engage in this sort of way of running NTT, and that may not be reflective of this community.
Right. I'm not very many people come to my server to do
Or
this.
or whatever. You don't have to do it by coming to your server, just interacting with you.
But they're not. I mean, that's what I wanted to say is that I find them in the wild, on a YouTube.
Or the ones in the wild. Like there may be selection bias there as well. Like so. But anyway, it just may be the type of vegans you are experiencing doing this in this way. It's just may not be reflective. And the way to just answer that is an empirical question. And I don't know the answer to that empirical question. I suspect you don't really know it either. But I don't have any reason to think that this is how vegans are just doing this. They're just like, their strategy is, my goal is to make you look stupid, and I'm just going to use this sorority's way of gaining more clarity and more clarity until I make you look stupid, and then there's the end. In fact, I've heard, I have a commonly different experience. Now, sometimes that does happen when they really do say stupid things, but that doesn't mean their goal was to say them look stupid. Look, if they happen to say something stupid, they'll point it out, but oftentimes I actually hear them say things like, okay, well, listen, do you really believe this? Is this really, like, they had an opportunity to make them look stupid, but they in fact say like, okay, well, do you really?
I know that just because you make someone look stupid,
Yeah.
intention isn't to make them look stupid.
Right.
I get the difference.
Right.
I'm saying that they come across as having those intentions.
Right. Okay, but that's coming across and having that goal are different things. It could very well be, because my understanding is, okay, so are you taking, okay, so you're taking the view here that they're coming across, or that you obviously are taking the view they're coming across. But in terms of whether that's their actual view, that's just an empirical matter, and I don't see see that.
Obviously inferring from my experience.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
But there's evidence against. But there's plenty of evidence against that. I mean, I'm sure I can bring up many cases where someone has an opportunity to make the other person look stupid in that dialogue, and they're just not doing that. They're actually just trying to make it not reach an olive branch out and say, hey, you actually probably don't believe this. Just think about it. And like their intention is obviously just to actually probably make them go vegan or something like that. Their intention is to make them reflect and like have more value for animals or something, rather than to just make the other person.
Experiences like that wouldn't have such a harsh judgment.
I'm sorry, you I couldn't hear you. You were
sorry. If I had more experiences like that, I wouldn't be such a hard critic of
right. So that's why I think there's a selection bias, right? Because you seem to have a lot of experiences like that, and I have less experience like that. Maybe there's selection bias on my end, but in any case, the way to resolve that is just some
selection bias wasn't an intentional thing.
No, I'm not saying it is.
Right?
No, I'm not suggesting that selection bias is intentional. I'm sorry?
Just clarify for me, but isn't that what that term means, a selection bias?
No. Selection bias doesn't mean anything about intentionality. It doesn't mean there's an intention to select a certain population. It's just a statistical effect. Okay. It's just a it's just the statistical effect that gives a non-representative sample. It doesn't mean that if the selection bias is at play that you are intentionally doing something wrong, or intentionally like trying to get a non-random sampling of a certain sort. A selection bias in statistics, it's just something that can happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting there's any like bad faith for you're doing that. I'm not. Yeah. You're not like trying to see. I'm not suggesting you're trying to seek out some sort of like.
That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Cool. But yeah, I do think that there may be a selection bias there. You could just by happenstance. And look, there may be a selection bias on my end too. Like I'm not, without me trying to seek it out. It's just because I'm where I am and you're where you are. We, operate with different experiences and we get our experiences different ways, which both may be non-representative of a random sampling of whatever set we're talking about. That's all.
No, I got what you're saying. I can only go off of what I have. You can only go off what you got.
Well, I'm not. Well, sure, but I'm understanding. I'm understanding that that my experience has the limitations of experience that it has, and I may very well be incorrect if you were like if you're basically able to show me like, oh, here's a whole bunch of examples where people like have this sort of nefarious goal, and presumably you would be the same. You would say like, okay, well, I can show you all these examples that you are not aware of people not having this nefarious goal, and maybe our impressions are both a little off, and that's the sort of thing that and how much we're off may be more better resolved by some sort of higher analysis, like some sort of statistical analysis.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to disagree with that, but
okay, cool.
Obviously, right. We're not going to bother.
Right.
Sure. Just because of how much work.
But in either case, just to make it clear to everyone, like, in terms of the norms I try to set, in terms of the norm about whenever I do this, like that's not the sort of thing that's happening. I generally just have, like, when I go into the conversation like that, I have like a set of goals. Like, one of those goals, yes, is to like, okay, I do want to understand more about the other person, about what the other person's values are. I do want to understand, I do want to get enough clarity such that I have gotten to the point where the person either says something I don't believe is either being honest, or I do believe they're being honest, but if upon reflection I think they don't really believe that. Point where I think the person's acting in bad faith, or to a termination point where I think the person's lying, or to a termination point where we agree, or to a termination point where, well, that is a termination point where the person says, oh, I reflected on my values and like, oh, okay, I may have been mistaken.
Okay, I agree then.
Yeah. I mean, there are various different termination points that would achieve some goal in a conversation like that. I'm not just going in being like, oh, because the norm I'm trying to set is not just going in being like, oh, exploit clarity issues to make the other person look like an idiot because they're not familiar enough with clarity issues. Okay. Just to go anything further about that before, because I'd like to go through like the comment and because there are certain things. Well, actually, let me just ask anything further about that. I think we're in agreement.
Well, I mean, you're making claims about yourself or maybe your inner circle, about the sort of norms. I mean, I don't know how much trust I can extend on that. It wasn't that long ago in DMs, and I hope this is okay to say.
Mm-hmm.
But
when you say how long ago, what are we talking about?
A couple of years, a few years.
Couple, 2018, 2019,
something like that.
Well, that's like 6 years, 7 years.
I mean, I could go search, but it might have only been a few years. I mean, our correspondence have been very erratic. Like every.
I understand. Like, look, I mean, my approach is, I'm not, just to be clear, also, like my approach is.
Like, do you want the specificity of the year? Like, is this important?
Well, if you're gonna say like about a year ago I said something kind of silly, and then it turns out to be 7 years ago,
you said anything silly,
or at least not reflective of my current approach, right? Because I will. One thing I will grant is that there are approach differences that I've taken. Like, there's norms that I've changed about my approach over time.
Okay, so would you say that what I was saying was characteristic of you at some point?
So when you were saying, like, have I ever gone into a conversation to make the other person look stupid? And I probably have gone into a conversation, and one of the goals at some point in time was to make the other person look stupid. Have I ever gone to a conversation and my goal is to make the other person look stupid by exploiting like clarity issues, by exploiting that? No, I don't think that was true of me at the time. I don't think that specific strategy is something I've done. I've like gone into a conversation with the goal of making a person look stupid by exploiting vagueness, knowing the other person doesn't know about vagueness, but I'm just going to exploit it to make the other person look stupid. Like
claim I'm making, though, right?
What?
That's not even the claim I'm making.
What is the claim you're making?
The claim I was making was that somebody would go into it wanting to make somebody look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say anything stupid, so you ask more clarifying questions until they say something stupid.
Oh, so have I ever? So the question is, have I ever gone into a conversation wanting to make the other person look stupid, asking?
That's all you need for the intention. The intention doesn't need to be longer than that with a particular strategy, because you would just go with the flow, right? You would use whatever tools you can think are the best at the time. You don't have to pick a strategy.
I'm sure I'd have to really remember. I could imagine it's. I've had a lot of conversations. Have I ever had a conversation where one substantial goal was to make the other person look stupid? Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if that were true. I don't think that is, at some point. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like at some point throughout the years, that's like a goal I've had when I've talked with someone. But again, I think that I don't think that is a very common thing that even back then, but I don't think that that's like a general approach that I take, and I don't think I've done that for years. But okay.
I'm saying I can only extend so much trust, and like I said,
well, I'm not asking you to trust
more of a pass than I do anybody else in this community.
You see what?
I said I would give you more of a pass than I would anybody else in the community.
Sure. And to be clear, you don't have to trust me. I'm just asking if you think the opposite, like you disagree. But okay, fine. So then, if so, at the very least, do you is there anything we disagree on thus far about what I've said? You may not have to agree. You can say you don't know, but
which points exactly?
Well, we were talking about the norms that we're trying. I was talking just making a point about the norms I'm trying to set.
As to what your norms are, or what.
Yeah, and the norms I'm trying to set, the inner circle. Yes.
I don't know.
Okay, so sure. Okay, so you don't know that. So you don't know in terms of whether. So what I was saying in terms is the norms I'm trying to set are not the norms of just going into a conversation to make the other person look stupid and just asking clarifying questions until they say something stupid. Like that is not a norm I'm trying to set. That's not a norm.
You assert it.
What?
I can acknowledge that you said that.
Right. Just to be clear, you don't disagree. You don't think I'm lying about that, or you're not taking a view that I'm like dishonest about that. That really is a goal that I have. Like that's like a norm I'm trying to set. Like you.
No, but yeah. None of my comments referred to just you specifically.
Okay, sure. No, I get that. I'm just making a clarifying point about myself and the inner circle. If you're making a point more broadly, we went to the selection bias issue, right? And so it's an empirical question. Okay. So to say, okay, now I'm just going to go through to the comment because there's certain things I wanted to discuss. To say to understand the other person's values as a goal of the asker doesn't do much to illuminate the situation. Given that we accept vagueness as a feature of language, then we accept that some amount of language-based conveyance will also be vague. Thus, you cannot be told to fully understand the ASCII's values. There's going to be some degree that you don't understand. Maybe it would be clearer to say that you want to understand what the ASCII's understanding of their own values are. You want to know how much they can make cognitive. As it would make more sense to say, I want to know how much you know about your values, then I'll stop asking, rather than I want to know about your values, then I'll stop asking. The latter really has no clear endpoint. Obviously, these questions are related, but this point is about having an endpoint of the questioning. Okay. So I think about that. Someone can have. Yeah, sorry.
Any disagreement?
Yeah, I think I might. I think so. I mean, I in terms of if what you mean to say is like in terms of the trade equalization process, there's going to be some inherent difference in the stop point. If one has the goal of finding more out about the values versus finding more out about what the other person's knowledge or view on their values are, I don't think there's going to be an inherent difference in the stop point. So, for example, if my goal in either case is to get like 30% in the way of the trade, whatever percentage we come up with, it could be 1%, 2%, 30% of the way through the trade equalization process, and I only need to know that percentage and then I'll stop. Whether it's knowing, whether the goal is knowing what the values are or knowing what the other person knows about their values are, I'm going to stop at 30%. The only difference is if I stop 30% and my goal is to know what the values are, there's an added level of epistemic uncertainty. There's a different type of clarity issue, which is an epistemic uncertainty because it's an inference I'm making about their answers. They could be wrong about that, just like they could be wrong. They can say they're going to enjoy this flavor of ice cream. You know, if we set up a trade equalization process between chocolate and vanilla, and they say, okay, well, 30% along the way, I'm not going to like that anymore. And then they try it and then they're like, okay, well, it's actually not so bad. They could be wrong about that. They could be uncertain about their values, but 30% of the way is still the point at which I'll stop if that's the purpose of the clarity that I'm asking for. And then it's going to be 30% whether it's a question about what their values are. Yeah, whether it's, I'm sorry, what?
Whether they know it or not is what you're saying?
Yeah, whether it's going to be 30% of the way whether I'm trying to get their information about what their values are, or I'm trying to get information about what they know their values are. If my goal is to get 30% of the way through, that is the clarity that will be asked for either way, and that is the same stop point through the TEP.
And like where I can like understand principle what you mean by like asking for 30%. There's no practical way to know you're at 30%, right?
I'm not. Yeah, sure, I agree. There's no practical way to know I'm at 30%. But the point is that regardless of what percentage that, the point here is just regardless of what percentage it is, whether it's 10, 30, or whatever percent. The point here is that the stop point is not different between those two different goals. Whether I have a goal of getting 30% of the way for knowledge about values, or whether I have a goal of getting 30% through the way of values, the stop point is not different. That's all I'm saying.
Well, okay. I mean, we're talking in a practical case here. We're not just talking about this. I mean, at least I'm not talking about this very abstract percent that just sits there. The point is like where somebody could actually practically stop asking questions, right? So the idea is that somebody will actually be able to stop and say, okay, I've gotten that 30%. I'm good now.
I don't see wait, why would that be different? Like if I say, because the only difference here is that the
you say that you're going to stop at 30%, but you can never recognize when you actually have that.
Well, then that would be the case. I don't see why that would be different between knowledge about values and values. Like the knowledge about values are just being used as a proxy for the values, as an epistemic proxy.
Right, but you can ask someone, right? What do you know about the trade equalization process? Just tell me what you think about it. And when they say, well, I've said all I can say, you can say, well, all right.
Well, that's true about
what I have to say about
both.
that.
Yes, but that's true about both of them. Because like then in both cases I have information about the 30% I'm seeking. In the case where I'm seeking the values,
You
I have
30%.
I'm sorry?
You wouldn't know if you had 30%. That's
No, but I would no, but with respect to the 30% I'm seeking, I would know that I have what I can get out of that person in either case of the value. So if the person says, "Well, I don't know," if I just say, "Okay," they just start by saying, "I don't know," and they're being honest, then whether my goal is to ascertain how much they know or what their values are, I've gotten what I can get out of that process, that procedure. So in the case of if I'm trying to get information about what they know about their values, I ask what they know about their values, and they say, I don't know anything about my values. I don't know. Okay, fine. So I got, with respect to the 30%, I have an answer. The answer is you don't know. In the case of what your values are, if I'm using this exercise for this 30% as a way to make an inference, and the person says they don't know, okay, well, the inference I'm making is that they don't know. And in terms of what their values are, I'm at the same place, which is agnosticism. So I'm going to stop then, because what am I going to gain further by continuously asking them? What am I?
I don't know what you mean by in regards to the 30%.
Okay,
Like, what
so,
way does this
yeah,
practically make a
sure.
difference?
So let's say we have all right, let's take chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream, right? So let's say we have $10 of chocolate ice cream, and we trade equalize that to the other end, which is $10 of vanilla ice cream, right? So 30% would be $3 of vanilla ice cream and $7 of chocolate ice cream. And I'm just trying to get enough clarity to know what someone's taste preferences would be 30% along the way. So if they can tell me what their taste preferences from chocolate, from $10 of chocolate to 1.9 to 2.8 to 3.7,
So
they've given
tenths.
I'm sorry?
So you want to do it in tenths.
We can do it. I mean, it's just an example. I can do it in hundreds. It doesn't really matter. I could do it in fractions of one.
Well, but the point was that if you have,
it could be. We could break it down. You could do it in half dollops too. I mean, it doesn't.
No, it does matter because it's an infinite granularity.
No, sure. Okay, no, it doesn't have to be an exact tenth. It doesn't have to be. I'm just trying to give you you asked me what you mean by 30%. So I'm just saying. So what I'm just saying is that
just let me ask this full question. If you had information about 10 zeroths, 9 1, 8 2, and 7 3, do you have 30% of knowledge of all logical possibilities in between?
Do I have 30% of? No, I'm not saying that. No.
Right. So what do you mean by 30% clarity?
So,
do you mean 30% in between these 2 points?
Yeah, so yes, that's one thing someone could say. So someone could say, like, okay, well, let's just do 30% inclusive of everything from the full 10 dollops of chocolate to the combination of 3 7.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. So someone can ask for that sort of clarity. I'm like, I want to know how this person is going to taste this. They're going to say, yay, I like this, or I don't like it. And there's.
And you want to know every point in between those two.
Yeah, someone could want to know every point in between those two, and they don't need to actually instantiate every single point in between those two to make an inference about them, of course. So, for example, if
you have a broad enough or general enough principle.
Yeah, I mean, sure. If someone is allergic to vanilla, it's very easy, right? I mean, if someone is
well, it's just assuming that there's no switches in between, right? It's like
sure, I get it.
Particular percentage.
Yes, or the first point, or the first point in which the person says no, or like some idea of the point in which along there they say no, and then they won't ask for more. Look, that's the sort of thing. Like somewhere along this line, I just want to get some understanding about, when this person, how much. Like, look, it's not like even an abstract and practical thing. Like someone could be like, okay, this person really hates vanilla. I'm making ice cream for them. Like, okay, is it an actual big deal if a drop goes in? Or some people like some kind of combination. So, yeah, I mean, it's not. It's totally fine to try to get some clarity about that sort of spectrum.
Wait, what did you think I said something opposite
No,
to?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Okay, as long as like it's like, okay, because you're asking me like what I mean, what I mean by
30%.
yeah, 30%. Yeah.
So if you're clarifying that it's
Yeah,
30%
I'm clarifying.
of
Yeah.
all, like from point A to 30% in, I want the knowledge of all the in-between logical states.
Or some idea. It doesn't mean like I need perfect knowledge of everything. It's just something. It could be an inference. It could be some sort of like imperfect, credence. It's not requiring like absolute, some sort of infallibility on the matter. They want some idea.
I wasn't suggesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's just the way you say that. It makes it sound like kind of silly. It's like, well, if you really want all the possible knowledge on every single infinite possible thing, like when you say it like that, it makes it look fucking stupid. But it's really what's being asked really isn't fucking stupid. It's the thing. It's like I'm sure you appreciate the rhetoric there.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be rhetorical.
Okay,
I'm just saying that, like, even if you had like, not infallible knowledge, but just like knowledge of 30% of the trade equalization process from a human to a cow, you're probably never going to know whether you have that, given the amount of predicates you're dealing with and postulating.
That's a whole different. That's a whole different thing. That's so. But
Right, so, well, I'm saying just pick your percentage, right? You don't know whether or not you got it.
Wait,
so it's hard to take serious that somebody wants a particular percentage of someone's values because they don't even know if they have it or not.
Well, wait. Just before we get to, let's take one thing at a time. So, you're asking me what I mean by the 30%. I've given you at least one account of what a person would mean, or may mean by that, and I think we agree it's coherent. And now I'm just trying to get to the question of whether it matters, or whether that stop point is the same if their goal is to get an understanding of what the values are, i.e. in this case, whether they'll like the ice cream or not, or whether their goal is to get knowledge about what they think about whether they'll like the ice cream or not. And what I'm saying is, in this case, the stop point is the same. It's wherever the stop point is still at wherever the 30% is. So, for example, if the person says, I don't have any idea, what amount of dollops of vanilla I'm not going to like it anymore, then that procedure stops in both cases. It stops in the case of if I want the knowledge, because very clearly I've gotten my answer. They don't know their knowledge of what their taste is. If my goal is to get knowledge about what their taste is, well, clearly it also is going to stop, because what the fuck else am I going to get by asking them if they just start by saying no? I might go on to a different procedure.
Describing like a zero case fail condition here, right? I'm asking about the success condition.
Well, the success I mean, no, it does. Yeah, sure. If I'm just giving one example, like now so if someone says, okay, well, if someone says, I don't know exactly where it is, but I know for sure that it would take it. I have a high tolerance for vanilla, and it would take at least $5 of vanilla for me to not like it. Right. So if they give that sort of answer, then also the questioning stops, because they've given me an answer past the 30% point. So that means that if my goal is to answer the question of their knowledge of their values, well, that's been answered, because they've given me some assessment. They've given me some view of their values. So I've gotten that, and that covers the 30%. Or if my goal is to find out what their values are, then that's just going to be a proxy to what their values are. And that also covers the 30%. It could just be wrong. It has an extra level of epistemic uncertainty. But they've given me a clear case. They've said, okay, well, actually, anything, if they say anything up to 5, I'm going to tolerate, I'm good with, and I'm going to enjoy, and it takes that for me to say then they've covered it. So that would be the success.
In this particular case, they've covered 100% of
Right.
scenarios.
Yes, exactly. So the point is I'm not seeing now. So what I'm not seeing is that how all else equal, whether someone is using whether someone is asking for knowledge about one's values versus whether someone is just asking about whether someone has the goal of finding out knowledge about one's values or whether someone has the goal of finding out about one's values. I'm not sure why that would make the stop point different, or why they would have reason to have the stop point being different about this process if they're just using the person's answers about their values as an epistemic proxy for their values.
Right. Well, I mean, in your example, we've chosen chocolate and vanilla ice cream because it's a very simplistic, model to prove a point that we could do it at a level of value. But this is really only when it's simple, right? I've never in my life.
When you say it, just to be clear, when you say it, the process here would just be asking the question as and using the answers of someone's knowledge about their values just as an epistemic proxy to what their values are. That's the procedure. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So
in this idea, we could have an understanding of what their answers are in relation to the percentage that you were looking for. Right? Somebody says it would take anything up to 5 is fine. Anything beyond that is not. Right? That pretty much solves both questions of what they know and what their values are, assuming they're correct. Right?
Yeah, well, even if they're not correct, it gives one an inference. So you can make you look. We can grant the possibility. Yeah, sure. Okay, good.
Well, yeah, I'm only making the distinction because if we want to know what their values are, then we can also doubt what they say. Right?
Yeah, we want to get some more confidence on what their values are. Sure, we could frame it. Yeah.
In the context of NTT, right? There's so many predicates that it would be so hard for me to see you give a model of what 30% is.
Okay, so I think that yeah, right. No, I don't no, so wait, I think it really, I mean, I think it's when I say 30% is the idea that, well, I could just scramble all the infinite number of predicates, and where would 30%, it's not clear how 30% is ordered, what predicates order where. Do I start with no, of course. And
right. My point is, if some NTTer comes in saying, I'll stop when I'm at 30%, when I think I have 30%, it's never going to stop. They don't know.
Obviously, so yes, I agree. Obviously, if someone is acting like that, and they say, okay, well, what I'm doing with NTT is I'm using all of the logical possible predicates, and I'm asking you to just give me everything in between 30% of any combination without any clear way of knowing, okay, well, that's going to be covered in the way that the dollops of ice cream would, then yes, I agree, it's going to be very hard for an endpoint. But that's going to be the same whether my goal is to know about their values with this procedure or to know about the knowledge of their values with this procedure.
In what way? Like, in a practical sense, don't you think you could practically stop when somebody says, this is what I know?
Well, but then if they say this is what I know, then I don't see how both procedures.
Then it's like, I have 100% of what you know. You've told me what you know.
Yes, and whatever it is that they know, I have the answer in both cases. In the first question about what they know, I have the answer. In the second question of what I can use as they know as a proxy for their values, I also have that information.
What way do you have that second thing? Right?
Wait,
like,
what?
In what way do you have that second thing? Like, in regards to a particular percentage?
Well, whatever that, when you say in regards to a particular percentage, if they say here's what I know, and they provide, I don't know, they provide anything or nothing or anything in between.
Assuming they provide something and not nothing.
Okay, yeah. So they say, well, I know that up until one hair of a cow on a human wouldn't be enough, but if they have, I'm not sure about beyond that. Okay, so they provided something. Now, in terms of that 30%, I have some amount of knowledge about what they know. Not there. It hasn't covered 30%, but I have information about that 30% that they don't know it. So I have the 30% of knowledge. And in terms of what their values are, I have exhausted that 30% in terms of its utility to find what their values are. I have enough to know a fraction of that 1% to make an inference about a fraction of that 1%. And I've also known that with respect to the rest of that 30%, they don't know. And so that doesn't carry epistemic import in terms of what their values are. And so I stop there as well.
Right. Because you stop mostly because they don't have anything more to say. But now let's take
but the stop point is the same either way, what the goal is.
Well, I don't think what I'm trying to say is the percent goal doesn't really matter. Because we stop when people stop having anything to say. Now, theoretically, if you say that there's a 30% goal, right, or whatever, then there's a theoretical point where you would stop asking questions because you have as much information as you want.
Right, exactly. The point is that it doesn't have to be 30. It could be 1%. It could be any percent across
Well, of course, it could be any percent.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that there's actually a stopping point.
Yes.
If there's a percent of values that you want to know. I want knowledge of your values up to this X amount, right? So there would be an idea that you could stop once you have it.
Yes. But do you think, wait, just to be clear, like this whole thing is about if there's an inherent, it's just about, and it's really not like a central point like I wanted to even focus on. I'm not sure why I'm spending this much time on it.
It came up either, but it just did. We can trace back. Give me a second, actually. Abby, give me a sec.
No, I'm still.
Apologies.
All right. Yeah. Look, I think I think it's really simple. I don't really see how we would disagree on this. The point is just that whether someone is using what someone knows as a epistemic proxy as a procedure for their the goal of finding out their values, or someone just has the goal of finding out their values, the stop point of the procedure is just I don't see how that's going to be different. The stop point of the procedure seems just to be the same.
Well, okay, take a scenario where you want 10% of knowledge. They have, or you want to know 10% of their values. They have 30% of that information. So they have more information than you want to know.
Yeah.
That would assume that you would stop before you know everything that they know. Right? Because you only wanted 10%.
Yeah, you wanted 10% of the values. Okay, yeah.
Right?
So you're saying the value thing, you're saying one has no stop. Sorry. You're saying one has no stop point. What you said in the comment was one had no clear stop point, but the other had a clear stop point.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say to the person, my goal is to know what your values are. I'm going to use your knowledge about your values as an epistemic proxy for that.
Right, of course. I mean, that part you don't need to repeat. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah, but then why aren't either of those goals going to have the same clarity in what the stop point is?
Right, because you don't know when you're at 10%. That's the problem. When somebody tells you they've said all that they know, right? Then you go, okay, we're done.
Right, but that's
a clear stop point. But
right.
When you say, look, you know 30%, but I only want 10% of it, you can't stop them at 10% because you have no clue where that is.
Wait. Hold on. I'm not under. I'm not under. Okay. So here's what I'm trying to understand. I'm not because I don't disagree with any of these things, and I'm not sure how that makes it the case that there's no clear stop point for one but not the other. So if someone is saying, I want 10%, you have 30, I want 10%, you have 30, and I'm using your knowledge as an epistemic proxy. So if someone says, okay, well, I'm going to stop. Could you just tell me how one has a clearer stop point than how the difference in goals makes a clear stop point of the other if the strategy is outlined like that and they're both coextensive? It seems like they would just both be coextensive. I'm not understanding why there would be a different stop point with the two different goals.
Well, it seemed like you were agreeing with the one point I said was that you wouldn't know when you're at 10%, right? So if somebody, or are you disagreeing with that? You
wait,
wouldn't
just elaborate on that.
Right? Okay. So as we talked before, 10% means 10% of the logical possibilities within a trained equalization point, right? We also said that the amount of predicates, ordering, and all that makes it incredibly complex to know whether or not we've covered 10%. Right? So you're asking somebody questions. They know more about their values than you want to know because you only want to know about their values up to 10%.
Yeah.
So you start asking questions. What about this? What about that? Right? But you don't know when you've reached 10% in order to stop. That would be your stop once you know 10%, but you just don't even know if you're ever there. Right?
Why don't wait. I don't, but I'm not understanding why this is different with the knowledge thing. Like if my goal is to have 10% of the person's knowledge versus 10% of the person's values. In both cases, like I'm going to rely on the same stop point, which is them saying, well, here's 10% of my knowledge. And that's it.
Because, well, assuming that somebody's knowledge is not the knowledge of every logical point, which is just a ton of information, right? Their knowledge is going to be a lot smaller. And they can enumerate whatever they have. If you wanted 10% of their knowledge, which I think would be a really weird ask, but they could actually just write them down and give you 10% of that.
Look, the point is not. Look, the point is just I'm not seeing how the point at which they go from knowing to not knowing or going from like a stop point is going to be the same. Look, let's just get clear because now I'm not even sure what you're trying to say at this point because it seems like a really simple thing. It's like if I'm going through a iterative process for a proxy and I'm only just relying on the proxy and wherever the proxy ends is just wherever the knowledge ends, it seems like I'm going to stop the same way in both cases. So if I'm trying to make a value judgment now on how important it is to do because it seemed like a very off topic point. Like it seemed like it's something I didn't agree with, but it didn't seem like a very important thing. So I just want to get clarity on what. So I guess we should just get clarity on what it is you're trying to defend then. So when you when you're going, are you trying to say that when someone has the goal of knowing a given like X, let's call it X amount of of a person's values versus a goal of having X amount of a person's knowledge about their values, that one has a clearer stop point than the other?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Is there like a case, like, is there an argument for that? Is there like it's not clear to me why that would be true. Like, okay.
Well, it's just because the trade equalization process is huge, right? Whereas someone's knowledge is going to be smaller. And it's going to be small enough that somebody could enumerate 10% of it if they wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, my generalized
but now, okay, we seem to be talking past each other again. This is the same because I agree with that, and to me, it's very confusing why the stop point would be shorter in either case with either goal, because if one is using the enumeration of one's knowledge as a proxy for the values, then it stops at the same point when they've enumerated. So.
Well, knowing what 10% of what someone knows isn't knowing 10% of their values.
I understand that, but the process is still going to stop there because that's all you can get. Because again, if the procedure is just to use their knowledge as an enumeration of their values, it doesn't have to be 10% of their values. 10% of the knowledge doesn't need to be 10% of the values for the point to stop there, because you're still not going to get any further information of their values out of that. So
I'm not even sure what your objection is, because I'm trying to, like, maybe we're talking past each other here, but I'm saying that you can know when you have 10% of someone's knowledge, or at least have good confidence of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't have good confidence when you have 10% of their values.
Right. That's fine.
Right. So you stop.
But that's fine.
But think you have what you want, and in one case you won't know.
Wait.
That's a difference.
That's fine, but that's fine. I'm not talking about when you reach the point where you know the answer. I'm talking about where you reach the point where the procedure stops.
Yeah, you would stop once you got what you wanted.
Well, no, you would stop. We would stop asking.
Or when they fail.
Right. Well, okay. So that's important. Or when they say they don't know, then you would stop. But the point is, if that procedure stops at the same point.
Before the failure conditions is fine. The success conditions are the difference.
Okay. Well, hold on. But then okay. So I'm not so okay. At this point, I'm a little bit confused about what what you're trying to say, because here's where I'm at. I don't see a issue, and I guess we will have to. I don't see an issue with someone having having an approach where you say, okay, I want to know what your values are, but here's one way of knowing about your values. I'm going to ask you questions about your knowledge about your values and use that as an inference. And
that's
I don't see how. What?
We agree on that, yeah.
Okay, and I don't see how that, and I don't see how that is. And I don't see how that comes with some, clarity issue where it's like, I'm going to be like there's just no. It's unclear where I'm going to stop. In a way that if I say, okay, well, I want to know what your knowledge about your values are. Someone's knowledge about what their values are might be greater or lower than the values I'm looking for. It would just depend on what we're dialing in. So, yeah, it's not clear to me. So, is there like a specific claim that you're trying to make here about that in terms of the difference being in where this clarity of a stopping procedure is, or like what is
this claim? And I can't tell if you even agree with the claim I made or not.
No, I don't. At this point, I don't know what claim. At this point, I'm honestly, I don't know what claim you're making. You are making. So, I thought I did. So, but at this point, I'm not really sure about what the claim is. To be honest, I'm not sure. What is it that you're trying to say?
Okay. Yeah, it's just if you ask, you're going to stop on some success condition of some knowledge of some values, right? You won't be able to stop on that success condition because you won't know when you're there, right? Unless you're just like blistering before it or way ahead of it.
Wait, let me just write this. Okay, so you're, because I'm not understanding. If there is a success condition
Of asking about someone's values.
Asking about someone's values. Okay.
You won't know where to stop.
Just a point of procedure. Avi, since you're writing stuff, do you want me to just bring the linearizer in?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there's a success condition about asking about someone's values, you won't know when you've reached the success.
You won't know when you've reached it.
You won't know when you've reached the success condition?
Yeah. Unless you're really far below or really far ahead.
Unless below and ahead of what? So the vagueness area? What do we your
Yeah, like as if they've given me so much information that this is obviously above 10% or
far ahead of, unless you're really far below, unless what you're saying, the knowledge they've provided is really far below or ahead. What
yeah,
do they
for their values? Yeah,
unless the knowledge of their values is really far below or really far ahead. Okay. If there is a success condition about asking about someone's values, you won't know when you've reached the success condition unless knowledge of their values is really far below or really far ahead of
the given percent.
The given success condition, the given percentage at which the success condition lies, or something. Okay, something like that. I've written it and posted in general chat. If there is a success condition about having someone's values, you won't know when you've reached the success condition unless you have knowledge of their value, unless the knowledge of their values is really far below or really far ahead of the percentage of the success condition.
Right.
Now I could
agreement about that.
Okay. Yeah, I could grant that, but I'm not. I think we're talking past each other again because I'm granting this and I'm not. Okay, so if that's all you want to say,
the stuff that you kept saying, I was granting as well. So
okay,
I said I think we're talking
what I'm talking about is when the procedure, the iterative procedure, stops. It's not because someone could grant this and say, well, look, if my tool is to get a certain amount of knowledge about your values, I might use this tool and only get a fraction of that. I may only get 1% of your values, but I've still exhausted the tool to do that. So I'm going to
Why
stop.
I use the other example of when
So,
knowledge exceeds.
yeah. Either way, where there's going to be a set point at which the usage of the tool stops, and you may or may not achieve your goal, but you'll know when to exhaust the tool. You'll know when to. There's the same point at which you know when to say, okay, well, I've gotten everything I can out of this tool, and I've either succeeded or failed. So
Wait, hold on. So you're going to ask them questions, right? You only want 10%. They have 30%. When are you going to stop? What is your suggested usage of this tool? Is to ask them everything?
well, no, that I wouldn't start by that. If a very easy, so one thing someone can say is, that could easily just go right past that is, for example, if someone, just to skip to the end here, if someone were to say, okay, well, I don't know exactly where, but it's somewhere around, there's like some cognitive capacity that's diminished, and some kind of like experience of love and meaningful relationships is really not there, and something, if they start saying things like that, I'm already well past it. And I might not be able to fully enumerate where all the predicates are and where all the things are, but it would be, the vague idea that I have in my mind is that they're already probably like 50% in or something. Just by giving that sort of answer in the TEP, like they're already far beyond whatever that 10% to me. And I'd be like, okay, stop, you've answered. Yeah? What?
Well, I'm asking, how do you know that? Why do you think that's 10% of all the logical possible worlds?
Well, I'm not. Well, no, I'm. What
You
I'm
just
not,
said that's already like 50%.
oh yeah. Something vaguely around there. It's just that, well, it could, well, it certainly could be. It's just, it depends on how you're ordering the percentage, right? You could put it in. You could put that characteristic anywhere you want in that TEP, right? Someone can order it, and it's just, in my mind, that sort of ordering is somewhere around there.
Why?
It's just like there's a certain, the idea is just, and I'm not going to be fully able to, dial everything in here. It's just that there's a certain amount of sort of characteristics that I have in mind that are at the extreme ends. And the order, I don't have a full account of the ordering. It's just that some characteristics are ones that are the things that don't really matter to me, like things like, extra hairs, spotted colors, hooves. Those are all going to be things that I'm going to be. A lot of those things are just going to be things that I'm putting on one end of it. And then when we get to things I care about more, those are going to be closer to the other end of it. At least that's a vague idea of what I have in mind. And so if someone just says that, okay, well, it's at this point, I'm already jumping over a whole lot of that. I'm not trying to make a claim that, like, if we randomly arrange the given set of properties, then it could be 1% in then. If someone were to say, oh, it's the point with cognitive things, one could arrange this in a way in which the cognitive cases are only 1% in. Sure. But it's just that sort of thing about how I think people sort of think about this. I don't think people are, maybe some people do. And if I had knowledge about that, then I would change then I would dial that in as well.
Right. So you're just increasing your knowledge by assumption that some factors are going to be irrelevant?
No, it's more so that increasing my knowledge by assumption that people may be more likely to put certain people may be more likely to envision certain factors in closer to one end than the other.
I don't know why end matters here.
Well,
right?
if we're asking to,
like, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but when you said 10%, you said 10% of all logical possible worlds, right? So however it's ordered doesn't actually matter. We're talking about quantity.
Yeah. So now I don't know if I said that in terms of like a random arrangement of the possible worlds. But I didn't. But if I did, then I misspoke if I said a random arrangement.
Well, you didn't say random arrangement, but you said 10%. I assume.
Yeah. No. Yeah. As an example, 10%. It's what I'm trying to say now is that there's like some sort of ordering to the 10%.
Okay, but
just
there's
like remember, just like in the ice cream example, right? Like there's an ordering to that ice cream example. It's not just like we scramble around the different arrangements of the vanilla and
I get
ratio.
that, but 10% is still 10% of the world, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it's the same quantitatively, no matter what the order is.
sure, yes.
So what you want when you say I want 10% quantity
Mhm.
isn't really changed by order.
Well, it certainly could be. So, for example, if the in the ice cream case, if someone if the order was random and someone said, "Well, I don't know exactly where it is, but I can tell you that um, it's at half, or it's at 50%, or it's at half a dollops of vanilla and half dollops of chocolate and above," then that really wouldn't tell me whether I've covered 10% or not, because maybe the first 10% would just be 1 vanilla, 9 chocolates, or 1 chocolate, 9 vanilla. But if it is ordered, if there is some order to it, then that would be more informative to me, because then that tells me about the priors. If they say 50% vanilla, 50% chocolate and up, well then that tells me that, well, if it's 100% chocolate or anywhere to that point, and I know what percentage it's covered if there's an order.
Yeah, okay, but in your ice cream example, we're using the granularity of two properties, right?
Yes, it's
Chocolate
just
ice
to
cream
make
and
a, yes, I understand, and it's more complicated if we add more. I get
in
that,
NTT,
but
we don't know
that's a
what a
difference in.
property consists of how
Well,
much is percent,
wait,
right?
hold
Hold on.
on.
Like, so cognitive properties, whatever they are, of
Mhm,
um, the human and the cow, or
mhm,
whatever example we're going to give, are always going to take up the same amount of quantity of
mhm.
the answer, regardless of how
Yes,
much where
it's
they're
not
ordered, right?
not being yes, not suggesting otherwise.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm saying here is that, so I'm not suggesting anything otherwise than that, but I'm saying if someone specifies that there's an order to these traits, such that these type of physical non-mental traits are shifted toward, like, the first 30%, or first, whatever percentage they take up.
Yeah, what percent we don't even know.
Yeah, sure, fine. um, if someone were to say, okay, well, it's somewhere around when the mind changes, then that's very informative, because that tells me, like, okay, well, I'm skipping over a whole bunch of shit here. Like if someone says with that dialed in.
Like, did you reach your success condition?
Wait, hold on, what?
Did you reach your success condition?
Oh, well, that would depend on what the success condition is. But yeah, if my success condition is getting to cover the non-physical traits, then yes, I have. If my success condition is getting to understand the person's values as they relate to the, how much they care about mentally about animals, then yes, I also have.
Right, but
Yeah. But the point is that it's much easier. You don't have to. The point here is that the point here is just that there are ways of easily engaging in this dialect without being needlessly over informative or pedantic and going through each iterative process. Like, okay, well, let's start with 1 hair. Now let's go to 2 hairs. Now let's go to 3 hairs. Now let's go to a hoof. Now let's go to, like, there's ways of just skipping over all that shit. is like, no, you don't need to waste time on that. Like, and 2 people, like, engaging in good faith should not have to have this be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. Like, like, so, and so all I was saying is that, like, just like if I, if I, yeah. So what I'm not, yeah. So in terms of the stopping condition, I still don't know if we disagree. I guess I hope we don't. In terms of the stopping condition is whether I succeed or fail about using this tool.
What?
And that's just going to be the same if I use someone's answers as an epistemic route to a stopping condition, epistemic route to some knowledge they have about their values as a proxy to me gaining understanding about their values. The stopping condition is just going to be the same whether I fail or succeed. It's just I've either failed to get their knowledge of their values, or I failed to get their so I could or maybe it's not the same, but it's not clear to me at the outset, depending on how much knowledge they have, if one would be one would be more like come with some extra additional clarity than the others. But regardless,
I'm not sure, because you pointed out something that I said in this comment, and you wanted to say you disagreed with it. I really don't know.
Well, at first I did, but now I'm not even sure if I disagree with it, because I'm not sure what was being said. I had some idea of I had some idea of what was meant, but now I'm not really sure what. I'm not sure if I disagree with it at this point, because I'm not really sure. But in either case, and I'm not sure how much time I have to invest in figuring it out. But in either case, I hope we can agree that if someone can certainly have a goal of getting knowledge about someone's values, and just use their knowledge about their values as an epistemic proxy, while not having some unclear termination point. Just as someone can have knowledge about just as someone can have the goal of getting knowledge about one's values, and just asking that and using their answers as a proxy to that, while not having some unclear termination point. Agreed?
Like the possibility of it, but in practicality, I was saying that going after some percentage of someone's values is not going to.
This is just right. To be clear to everyone, the percentage thing is just to make a coherent example. It's not like I into a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
I know that. Like, that's why I'm saying some percent or whatever. I'm trying to keep it vague. I'm not like
what. Yeah. I just don't want it to be mischaracterized. Yeah. No, I just wanted to be mischaracterized. Like, I want you to give me 30, but like, it's just an example. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get that.
All right. So
and the way that you get that information about someone's value is obviously by asking them questions. Like, there's no disagreement about that.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Cool.
The only point I was trying to make is that a success condition of someone's knowledge is a clear stopping point, because you know when to stop, right?
Yeah.
When they say something like, "That's all I know."
Yeah.
Right. But when your end point is some percent of knowledge of their values, right? Like you wouldn't, due to the complexity, wouldn't really know if you were there.
Well,
unless they say something incredibly broad, right? Like broad enough to cover everything. You're like a disjunct, or
just the only point there is that there still is if someone says that's all I know in both cases, there is still a clear stopping point. That is still a clear stopping point in both cases.
Well, again, like if somebody's knowledge exceeds.
No. Even if it doesn't exceed, it's a stopping point to the procedure. Is all I'm saying. Like you may have not gotten your answer.
No, yeah, I'm agreeing with that.
Okay, cool. Okay. If you're agreeing with that, then we're
know if you're agreeing with the point I'm making.
All right. Well, then I didn't. Well, okay. If you agree that there is procedurally, that's procedurally the same stopping point as
failure conditions. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Right? So then.
In failure conditions, we stop when they run out of things to say because we can't get anything more.
Okay, cool.
In success conditions, we can't stop early because we don't know when to stop.
So, well, unless they go over, unless it's clear that we've reached a success condition.
Yeah, unless you're like a crazy point after.
Yeah. Okay.
That is the difference of stopping.
Yeah, so they're okay. So that's fine. Then if that's what you're saying, if you're just saying that that there are certain cases where there is where when you use something as a proxy for something else, then you might have some difference in clarity where the stopping procedure is. Then that is fine. It's but as long as we agree that you can have either of those things, and you could not have unreasonable stopping. Like we can get into that.
Stop when they have nothing more to say. Like,
Well, okay, yes, yes. If they have nothing more to say, or if they have made an obvious success condition.
unless we design a machine that can scan their brain or some shit.
Yeah. No, I sure. Okay. The next thing was, however, one problem here is that giving answers in the terms of what you know is going to be variable in terms of effort memory. That is to say, I could give more clear answers with more time spent. I could come up with hypothetical in between beings, judge them, and refine my answers. Thus, my answer given isn't going to be exactly what I could know, but amount known based on an amount of effort, assuming any bottom-up ethical consideration. So what is being asked for? What knowledge the person has the right there in the moment, thinking about for 5 minutes, can come back in a week. Only the 2 points might be reasonable if asked for an immediate non-thought answer, but would be odd if a week was spent on it. Okay, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I totally grant that. I mean, I totally agree that, someone might produce different answers or produce more clarity if they think about things for longer. And again, it's just how much of that is enough is just going to be what the purpose of the questioner is. And that's,
I mean, that's what I said at the end, right? That's
yeah,
what
I know. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, yeah. And all that. Yes. And I don't think there's anything, I'm not sure how much of, you said one problem here is like what, I don't know. It might be a problem for certain things. I'm not sure. I mean, it may pose like inherent problems. It depends on what you're saying, but sure. Now,
There's a problem in just that it's being vague. It's vague in what's being asked for. It's like, are you
well,
asking
that's gonna.
answer? Because most people don't ask it, and they don't clarify what they want out of it.
Okay, well, so that's something we can discuss, because I don't think there's any. Well, I think we have a difference in our experiences of like clarity of what's being asked for here, but that's fine. I just want to get through this and see if I have any disagreements, or if I understand things to the clarity that I want to. Okay, now, and then you finish off by saying, now I don't think your second paragraph quite sheds light on what is happening. Concepts like mammal, as you said, are often not given perfect, necessary, or sufficient conditions, and I agree it would be good for the goal of knowing why dog is a mammal but a turtle isn't. That's because the general goal of these sorts of definitions is classification of real-world objects. I need to know of the actual things I bump into the world, what goes into what categories, and dogs and turtles are actual things. Name-to-Tape specifically investigates the trait equalization process that wants to cover all logical possibilities in between two objects. Classification is a possibility, fine-grained as you want it to be. Thus, clarity for purpose isn't descriptive enough. If we were following the purpose of real-world classification, we would stop when the hypothetical beings are unlikely to ever show up in our lives. Almost every NTT runner I have seen is more desired than finally getting clarity than that. Okay, so just to put this in perspective, the example I gave here about the turtles and the dogs isn't to try to say that's the sort of thing happening with NTT. It's just to provide an example that the ask of the clarity is going to be based on a certain context and a certain goal or a certain norm. So if the norm is that sort of thing that you recognized, then there's going to be some sort of expectation about mammals to provide some sort of clarity such that you meet this goal. It doesn't have to be real world. If you take the view that Frankenstein is a zombie and Hercules is not, one might reasonably ask, okay, well, I'm not asking you to provide everything about zombies, but what's your understanding of zombies such that I at least understand that you're classifying Frankenstein as a zombie, but not Hercules?
I mean, I would still consider fictional objects as objects in the world. Just because they're not like made of material and walking around. They're just
okay. Then I'm not
narratives, and those are real.
Wait, so then what do you mean by the non-real world objects?
What do you, I don't think I used that term.
Well, you're saying that it's because the general goal of these sorts of definitions is classification of real world objects.
Sure, right. Like like a zombie in a store is something you might like encounter. You'll encounter the story or the narrative or the person who's talking about the narrative, right?
Okay, and if you encounter someone who's talking about, wait, so like as opposed to what? Like,
Well, as opposed to NTT, where a lot of these logical distinctions are just never going to come up again. They're not like part of a social narrative at all. They just kind of the questions start there and they end there, and that's it. They just dissipate. That's done with that.
but isn't that something you've encountered then in the real world?
Yeah, in a very literal sense.
Okay.
Like if it's clear for me not to use those terms and just say, actual things that you're going to continuously encounter.
Well, the point
Things that you need to classify.
Yeah, I mean, the point here is just going to be that whether someone is going to use an example of something you're only going to see once in life, or whether they're going to use an example of things you're going to bump into or hear about again, the amount of clarity that's going to be asked for is still going to be indexed to the purpose of the questioner.
I don't think we disagree. What?
I'm sorry?
I don't think we disagree on that.
Okay, cool. Now, all right, and that's not right, and that's not going to. Okay, cool. All right, then fine. Then I'm not really seeing a whole lot of disagreement here. And what's the last part? After you say, if you, well, it comes down to a person asking NTT what level of clarity they want, and I think that's quite right, and ambiguous and annoying to deal with. And there's really nothing to do to discriminate between a person actually being interested in a level of clarity or a person who acts like a level of clarity is weird for rhetorical purposes other than the asker. I think what you mean to say is like a person who's like trying to use clarity as like a rhetorical device, like, oh, you don't have any clarity or something, or enough clarity that I'm asking, like, is, that's bad for you.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is that they just keep asking, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, you could be a little more clear than that. You could be more clear than that. And then, right, it's not because they don't want to know. They don't really care. They don't care about you. And that tends to be the case. A lot of vegans who ask non-vegans don't give a shit about that person.
In your experience, yes. So okay, so yeah. So yeah, I don't think so. I'm not saying if this is what's being said, then okay. Well, there are some ways to know, and there are certain norms by certain norms. So,
right. Well, okay. So you said earlier,
yeah,
you're just looking for a level of clarity. You're not trying to make people look stupid, right?
Yeah.
That is something somebody who is trying to make.
Let me just let me just before we get let me just get some one thing off the table. Like, so in terms of, so we the first part of the conversation was the quick part, Liz, because you're not saying there's any criticism my comment is related to the video. Are you saying there's any like criticism? Is there a criticism that you're saying more broadly about me or the like my close circle, or are you just bringing this up as like some sort of criticism you have about like the interactions you've had with other vegans more broadly, or like what?
Well,
what is it?
Varying levels of confidence, and that, like, I don't even know who you're referring to as your circle. I'm assuming you and Isaac, and I don't know who else you're putting in that.
Sure. So well, let's just start with me. Like, is it a criticism of me?
Could be like, do I think you're doing this to make people look stupid? I mean, I know you used to. So there's at least some degree of possibility that you're still doing that. I don't know what would have made you change or any of that stuff. I have decent interactions with you. I tend to we have honest conversations where we actually try to understand each other. So due to that, I
just real quick, when you say I used to, do you mean like I've you? What do you like? Just elaborate for a second there.
I mean, you at least made the claim, and a lot of the videos look that way. Like, that's how I would interpret old videos.
That my goal was to go into a conversation just to make the other person look stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's possible. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations. I mean, it could very well be the case. Is there a specific thing you're?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, then just now then.
I mean, it's been years. Been years.
So just to be clear, are any of these comments making a criticism of me?
No, I wasn't targeting you specifically.
Okay. Are any of these comments making a criticism of Isaac?
No, the comments weren't.
Okay.
I mean,
Are any of these?
But I'm not.
So you're saying the comments do apply to Isaac, but you didn't intend to criticize him with those comments. It's like
Isaac, at least of the past. Isaac, as I know him.
Okay.
But it's been, again, years since I've seen any of his stuff.
Okay. Okay, so if that's out of the way, so currently there's no there's no attempt at criticism at me. Okay, so then are you just making a point about how you think like NTT would be more productive? Are you making some other point about you think that there's a certain issue that's happening in this that could be made more productive?
I think a lot of people are using this tool as a way to try and either make people justify themselves or trying to make them look stupid, or just a lot of norms that you necessarily wouldn't agree with, but they're also using your defensive tools, right? So you might use a defensive tool like, I'm not looking for exactness, I'm only looking for some level of, reasonable conveyance or something like that, right? And you could honestly mean it, right? And there's no problem with you saying that. But other people will emulate you doing that, even though they're not. They actually do have the goal of
So
making
people can certainly be nefarious,
right?
And
so they're using your defensive tools, which might be rightly used, in order to protect.
Rightfully meaning that, like, honestly, it's like
Honestly.
Yeah. So they're being dishonest. They're saying like, oh no, like I'm not asking for exactness, but they really are asking for exactness because
like they would never stop until that you look stupid, right?
Yeah,
but they're going to claim that they're not doing this.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's certainly the case. You may have encounter people like that. You may encounter them regularly. I don't know. So, okay, so you're saying you're encountering people who are doing this sort of thing, that they're engaging in dishonesty. They have certain goals, and they're using things that I say as a sort of extra tool to do that, even more dishonestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that might be the case. I think that there's certain.
I think I would want to say something stronger. Is that if you set norms of how much clarity would satisfy you, or something like that, and people emulate that, it's going to be harder for them to get away with the bullshit that they try and get away with, right? Because then they're held accountable to what they just said. This is what would satisfy me, right? And then you can know whether or not you gave that to them.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. So in terms of just me setting, like, the norms of clarity are just dependent on what my goals are. That's the, and they may be different depending on what the goal is, of course. That's not just with name and trade, it's with everything. So I mean, if my goal were to just reach perfect clarity until someone says something stupid, then yes, that it would end until one of those two things happen. But there are certainly all sorts of other goals one can have that have different levels of clarity that are required to answer the question, that are, non-nefarious goals.
I'm saying you should set one norm of what amount of clarity everyone should want.
And that's going.
Just saying something begin with.
Yeah, sure. And so what I want to say about that is that there are certain um, norms about these sorts of things that in certain circles may be not clear, in certain circles may be clear, where I wouldn't have to do that. In certain circles, I may understand where their experiences are, and I will do that. I don't know what I'm not convinced I would need to do that generally, because generally in my interaction, I don't really have an issue with this, where I need to preempt like this. This like certain understandings. Oh, I'm not asking for you to solve sororities. Oh, I'm not asking. I'm also not asking this. Here is the, And by the way, what all these criticisms about vagueness of language is going to happen to is also going to be applicable to vagueness of clarity that's being asked for language, because
Of course.
yeah, I may not be able to exactly convey when I'd be satisfied.
Well, right then.
That's also,
you can obviously see either you get the same response back, or you both throw your hands up at each question.
right. So right, but we generally have we generally are doing fine, I think, in everyday life, and without like going through this process, unless certain people are being bad at their faith. So for example, like if someone says, "Where do you live?" right? We can imagine there are certain needlessly uninformative and needlessly over-informative answers to that. It says, "Where do you live?" Well, I live in the universe. Okay, yes, you do live in the universe. Oh, I live in the Milky Way. All right. I live in the solar system. Okay, I live on planet Earth. All right, like, and we can start there and needlessly go down until we get to the relevant answer, or they could just say, okay, we could start with the relevant answer, and we don't have to do this. Likewise, there are needlessly over-informative answers. Someone can say, well, I live in my apartment. Here's my address, but I also want to say that I sort of, in some vague way, live in my closet because I spend a little bit of time in my closet. But I don't really, I want to exclude the part of my apartment that has the washing machine because I don't live in the washing machine. So that's needlessly over-informative. Now, when we ask the question, I'm not going to ask, when I ask, hey, where do you live? I'm not going to start by saying, where do you live? And by the way, I'm not asking you to tell me what universe it is, if it's a multiverse. I'm not asking you to tell me the Milky Way or what planet. And I'm also not asking anything about your closet or your washing machine, because there's a sort of established norm that those are not the sort of things that are being asked. That's the sort of clarity that's either needlessly uninformative or needlessly over-informative.
Right, I agree with that. But you picked up on the thing that I would object to right at the end there.
Yeah.
There's an established norm.
Yes, exactly. And so at least in my, at least for me, now to be clear, I don't mean, when I say established norm, I don't mean univocally. So for example, if I were to have a conversation for someone who's interacted with you, I probably would start preempting things with like certain clarity preemptions, because my understanding is you've had this experience. And so I would do that. But if I'm having a conversation with like a normal person, well, not to say that anything like you're not normal or anything like that, but like an average person, I'm just going to ask the question. And if it becomes clear to me that they've had this experience, then I'll preempt. But I've had no problem just asking the question, just saying where. And
I mean, I'm not making the claim that you always have this problem.
No, I don't always have the problem. In my experience, I generally don't have the problem. It's only in a specific set of like people who think like vagueness critiques are clever to NTT or something, or like or at least act or come off that way. It's like, we found this clever little critique of NTT. Well, you're asking for too much, like it's the vagueness. Like in those sort of little philosophy areas, those are the sorts of areas where I get into like, oh, this becomes like a relevant issue. Usually with the conversation just goes on just fine when it's not someone from those areas.
Right. Well, I mean, talking selection bias, right?
Yeah, no, that is exactly. It could very well be.
Bother with a lot of basic first-time Andes.
Well, I think my selection
NTT
goes the other way these days. I try to avoid first-time Andes and try to go
right.
Yeah, but I'm saying generally for So there are certain circles where, yes, I'm going to expect to have to preempt a lot of bullshit, right? I'm going to have to preempt someone like if someone comes from a circle and thinks that, vagueness memes are a clever little critique of NTT from 2018 that hasn't been like already like talked about and addressed a million fucking times by now, then yes, I'm going to preempt that. If someone is coming from a little philosophy circle where they think law of identity things are still are a thing or haven't been talked about since 2018, then yes. If someone's coming from a little philosophy circle where they think that irreducible normativity is going to be a clever little critique from 2018 that hasn't been talked about, yes, I'm going to preempt a lot of shit to stop the headache.
Well, let's quantify over what my comment was actually about, which is mostly NTTers in the wild, like YouTube comments or Reddit, or just general social platforms where they've watched you or Ask Yourself or other notable figures run these sorts of types of arguments, right? Maybe, and if I'm right about the way that you and Ask Yourself used to be, that you guys made people look stupid, they want to do that too. They want to feel that sort of power. They're out there doing this shit, and they're using your defenses.
Just to be clear about this thing, because I don't like when I say there may be times where I've gone into a conversation wanting to make a person look stupid. That's a very rare, like even before, it's a very rare thing. I may have made people look stupid, and I may have gotten a lot nicer after, but like it was a very rare thing. Like there are certain very evil people that I've spoken to. It's like, okay, it would actually be a very good thing in the world that I've made them look stupid, but it was a very rare occurrence even then, where like that was actually my goal. Now I agree that like the conversations may have looked different back then, because like I took a more like abrasive approach, or my approach may have changed, but in terms of like the goal, I don't think it was very rare for my goal to just go in and be like, I'm gonna make the person look stupid. Like, just to make that clear.
I can acknowledge what you're saying. I don't think I can extend it to just believing you, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm not. That's fine. I just want to make it clear to the room, because
you're making clear to me what your position is.
Yeah. Because I may not have had I may have, and that's just to be clear. This also isn't saying I haven't used to have moments where I got more enjoyment out of making people look stupid. It's like, okay, yeah, a person's looking stupid. I'm kind of like winning the debate. I'm getting some enjoyment. That doesn't mean I've gone into the debate like, okay, this is my goal. It's something that happens, something that can happen in the discourse. But yeah, my general approach has changed over time, such that, do people still look stupid in conversations with me? Yes. Do I still sometimes, enjoy the comedy of someone looking stupid? Yeah, not as much as before. It's a little more boring now, but I enjoy meaningful conversations generally now, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'm acknowledging what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Just to make that clear. Now, if you're talking about like, okay, so you're seeing people on YouTube or Reddit or whatever, like just the general things, and they're trying to engage in this sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, it could very well be the case. So if your comment was just about the people you've experienced there, yeah, I mean, it would be more productive if they're, look, in general, anyone is going to have a more productive time with people who have certain like preconceptions, just to head off those preconceptions if it's not the case. And if it is the case, just clarify that, like, my goal is to make you look stupid, and I'm gonna ask for more clarity until you look stupid. That would save both parties a lot of time.
Nobody who has that goal, well, I'm not gonna say nobody,
is gonna say that.
They're not gonna say that.
No, of course they're not going to say that that's the goal. Well, some people, I mean, unless they're role playing or something, but yeah, sure. but no, I agree. And if that all is the point, I'm sure. I'm just not sure how that. I don't see how that would change the way I behave if I'm like not having an issue with talking with people, um, the way I do. I mean, when I talk to a person outside of
Well,
those,
I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that
yeah,
you, Abby, should
yeah,
behave differently. If you are if you go out in the wild and you see a lot of this annoying usage, right? And you kind of don't want it to lead back to you. You don't want people to say, well, I'm just, I'm doing what Abby does. I'm doing what Ask Yourself does. And you're like, no, you're not. This isn't,
well, that's why I'm
this isn't
having
how
this.
I run it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's also part of
And
why I'm
trust
having.
me, I get enough of that, of people,
Mhm.
taking my articles or whatever it is.
Well, also it's why I'm having. Well, also, there's, I don't see. I don't think I need to. Look, if there's enough of it, okay. So if there's enough of a presence of people saying, well, this is what Avi does, and they're doing something I'm not doing, then yes, that's going to motivate me to put out some like response to that because I don't like that. Yeah.
Sure.
So I can do that right now. Like to whatever degree, like someone is taking a strategy to just like what NTT is to make the other person look stupid and just to ask for clarity until that happens, and either by them failing to provide clarity or saying something stupid. No, that's a very naive thing to think about NTT. Like that's not. I think that's kind of silly.
And you
So
can
yeah,
also, I mean, if you're interested, just say what level of clarity is generally useful to
right,
some
and
people.
that's to the purpose of it is. And but then again, that's where I go back to like that's going to also be dependent on.
But if you want to say, look, it's just relevant to the asker, it's just whatever they want, right? And also that NTT comes with this like, oh, I just want to know, and I don't want to do anything with this information. I don't want to point out any implications, right?
Well, in some cases that could. Generally it's more. Look, I'll just tell you where I come from. Like where I come from, it's like there's several different termination points. We spoke about it. It's
well, sure. And one of the more interesting ones to me, and this is the one that I fought back against the most, is that there's some problem with people not knowing, right?
Well, no, that's not one of my termination. That's I wouldn't classify that as a termination point unless it's a thing that people have the goal of knowing that they don't know. Then that's something to point out and for them to explore. Sometimes people really do have goals of knowing those sorts of things, and when they realize they don't know, they want to know. That's fine.
Right, but
but
I mean, you agree that like in the past, it's been stated things like, well, if you don't know, you've been reduced to absurdity, this and that.
Okay, so then all right, I see. So then I just want to make something. Then I do. Okay, so now I do want to make the year clear. Then, okay, because I don't want it to be said that this is the sort of thing that happened a few years ago. Like this is like the sort of thing that happened, closer to 10 years ago, right? This is like, some 2017, 2018 shit. Like 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So then so I just want to like, then I do want to put a flag in the actual time. Cause I do remember that sort of like usage being said in those sort of certain situations. Yeah. But I would not characterize that. Oh, it was only a few years ago. Like, yeah, I don't think that's a very accurate way of saying, cause I don't remember the last time like, yeah, like this whole thing. Oh, you don't know. You've been reduced to absurdity. Like,
Yeah, we've had this conversation in DMs before, and I'm pretty sure we've hashed it out.
yeah, but I don't. Just to be clear, yeah, that's like to me, that's like 2018, 2017 shit.
Well, I mean that shit's still going around. So
No. Okay, but wait, I'm not contesting that. If I'll never look it just as a point of process. Like I'm not going to contest that if you could generate some retard or something. Like you could generate some idiot who will do something and not grow. Yeah. So if but in terms of like the the at least the norms I see in my server, like that's not the sort of I don't remember the last time someone has like said that in my server.
Well, I mean, I know I've never been on your server.
Right. Well,
I mean, recently.
Yeah.
So,
but the point, yeah. So I'm not right. So, okay. So, yeah. I mean, anyway. So to that point, it's like no, like that. I think that would be a very, kind of silly way of saying it. Now there is some sort of value in pointing out certain things that you can say, like, okay, look, it does seem a bit odd and at odds with other people's values that this is not the sort of thing that like most people think it would be very weird for you not to know. Like, so for example, if someone said, well, I really don't know if like that hair makes a difference in terms of whether we can kill them or not. It's like, all right, well, assuming you're being honest about that, like, that seems kind of silly to a lot of people. Maybe it doesn't seem silly to you, but it seems sort of odd.
Yeah, no, I think that would be odd. But do you think it's odd for somebody to say, I don't even want to think about it. I don't care. I don't think this has any impact.
No, I think most people don't care. So in terms of odd being uncommon, no, I think it's very common that people would say that.
Do you think it has any negative impact on their lives or their own values of a common average person?
Perhaps. I mean, I think a lot of people have values that they're, if they may either wish they had or they don't know about, that if they were to, and there's value in introspection, there's value in learning about those sorts of things. Maybe. I don't know. I would have to know more about like people's unrealized values to answer a question like that. Could be. But I think that a lot of people think that it doesn't matter. I think that most people think that that sort of thing is not the thing worth engaging with.
Well, I guess I'm getting out of you is maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the, people's like the empirics on people's unrealized values. That's a bit of a I have to really look into that. I'm not sure if there's enough there to look at to get an answer on that clearly, but sure. But yeah, in terms of like preempting, the preemptive idea is it's just going to depend on who I'm interacting with, right? So again, if I'm interacting with, some person I know nothing about further, I'm just going to assume that we're both playing on this intellectually honest field, that when I ask, where something is, someone is not going to, assume bad faith in me, that I'm just asking them to do some solution of Sority's paradox, nor am I doing some sort of like infinite like granularity thing that they could never get to, or like
don't worry about yourself, because it's not like any of my comments.
No, but I like, this is not just for me, it's just for like what I would expect for people to do broadly. It's like,
oh, well, then I think you're very generous to other people.
No, well, maybe but let me just finish. But let me just oh, that's my charger. I'll unplug my charger if that's make annoying people. Sorry. Yeah. So what I would expect in terms of just, and this is not just for NTT. This is for like any sort of this is for any sort of question. Just like in terms of the where you live question. In terms of the where you live question, it's going to be like if I met an average person and they asked me where I live.
That example, you don't need to.
Yeah, but look, if I met an alien, then yes, I would change that. I would preempt things. I would be like, oh, maybe I should start with the Milky Way. Like maybe I should start with this current universe. Like, or if I met with someone, a closet dweller, maybe I will specify that I don't live in the closet of my apartment. So that if there are like weirdos or something that, that I need to adjust for that, then yeah, I'll preempt things. And so when I meet, those individuals, then people should be adjusting for that and start clarifying that, oh, I'm not asking you to solve Sority's paradox. I'm not going through this iterative infinite thing. There are ways of getting around it and having a productive conversation about this.
Great. I'm glad that you're talking about it, that this is probably being recorded, that other people can listen to it.
Right. But the point is that's going to be dependent on who, like, the group you're engaging with, right? Because I'm not, to be clear, I'm not asking that people just do this de facto. I'm not asking people like have this automatic thing where they dial in some sort of the clarity that you need to dial in the clarity as much as possible you can when you ask the question. Like, you can just start by asking the question if you're both assuming good faith of each other, and if it becomes an issue, then dial the clarity in.
No, well, I don't think good faith
Unless-
alone is enough to inoculate against any issues that could
No,
come up.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it inoculates it. I mean, I'm saying that there's no wait. That's not what I said. I'm not saying it inoculates against it. What I'm saying is that you can assume it's not going to be a.
Ask yourself, what do you want? Like,
it's-
I'm getting tired of listening to your comments.
Wait, we'll get to you two lovebirds in a second. One moment. All right, that's the third part of this.
It's been shade the whole time.
Yeah. Wait, hey. All right. Look, just to finish off this part. Look, well, I'm not saying it inoculates against things. You may run into things. I'm just saying it's annoying for someone to assume that all this shit needs to be inoculated against it when they are coming at me in good faith. Just like if someone were to say, just like if I were to ask someone where they live and they were to start preempting all this bullshit, if they were to start saying, oh, okay, I'm going to ask you where you live, but I just want to make it clear that I'm not talking about the universe, and I just want to make it clear that I'm not talking about your closet or your washing machine. Like, if they were started just preemptively doing all this shit to me, it would be annoying. Now, if I were some freak who really did think those were clever critiques, it would be necessary. Sure, it would be helpful at least. So that's the approach I encourage people to take. I encourage people to take the general approach of just ask the fucking question. And if it becomes clear that it hasn't inoculated, which it doesn't in some cases, if it becomes clear that that there is a clarity issue at play, dial in the clarity then. However, if you have prior knowledge that you're dealing with certain groups of individuals who are going to make this an issue, or who are going to think that this is an issue, then yes, prophylax against all of that. So my approach of preemptively.
But the comments are just generally about NTTers in the wild, right? And you get some new NTTer, or maybe just some average person from the server or something like that, and they go out on Reddit and they start, somebody starts talking about something related to veganism. Immediately they're asked to name the trait, right? And it's never really clear what they want, nor is it clear to the person being asked, like, what would satisfy anybody. When you're talking about these, like, questions about location, you're right, there's, like, these established norms of the sort of answers that people want to get. But NTT in the wild, especially people who've never been asked these questions, they don't really know what it is that the other person wants. They don't know what is a satisfying answer.
So if look, I'd give the same advice to them.
Relative to the asker, well, then there's definitely no way to know.
Yeah, I get the
variation.
So just to be clear, I'd give the same advice to them too. Like, if they're interacting with a group like me, where I think there are established norms about this, then I would not expect them to be.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
but that's probably going to be more in your server, right? Like,
yeah,
people who come here to talk to you are going to know more about it than.
Yeah, but if you do think that there is a group where when you're asked a question, there really is no clear established norm about the clarity, then sure, then yes, then it would. Then for those other people, I give the same advice. It's just dependent on, just avoid needless clarity confusion if you have background reasons to think there's needless clarity confusion. Yeah,
I don't know if we disagree.
Yeah, no. Then okay, sure. Then I don't think. Okay, so then. Okay, so then we're clear that there doesn't seem to be. We agree that the first part doesn't seem to be that there's any criticism, at least of my comments, and then this, or at least you're not taking a position if there is a criticism of my comments, and then in the second part, none of the comments that you made are making a particular criticism of me, or a criticism of me, or at least not taking a position that it's making a criticism of me. And then in terms of the broad question about when to preempt things, it's just when you have background knowledge to anticipate that it would be an issue.
Sure.
Okay,
Right.
cool. Good. All right, awesome.
Like, and we would probably, just to make sure we agree on that last point,
Yeah.
you would agree there'd most likely be an issue on knowing what somebody wants in the wild, right? Outside of the server, first time non-vegan being asked.
In the wild. I mean, there's going to be a whole bunch of. You're talking about two normies talking to each other, so I imagine there's going to be a whole bunch of issues, and more some. So it certainly wouldn't surprise me.
Okay.
But then again, this is the sort of thing. But again, I don't know if it's the clarity of being an issue is standing out there. I think there's going to be 1.5 million issues just in virtue of them being normies and not knowing what the hell they're talking about broadly.
You would agree. Yeah, but sure. But you think this might be one of them, right?
It certainly could be one of them. I don't know how often. Look,
right.
I will tell you that I certainly have seen examples where people are in the wild, like whatever that means, wild. I guess like outside of these like more these servers on like some random place on Reddit or YouTube, and I'm like, holy shit, why are they running NTT like this? Like, what are they doing? This is like they're not actually being fair. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that. If you're asking like in terms of how often that's going to happen in different like whether it's how often it's going to happen on Reddit, how often it's going to happen, I don't really know. It wouldn't surprise me. But the advice I give is just going to be the same. It's like if you have background reason to believe on Reddit, like there's a certain like expected like bullshit clarity that's going to happen. Yeah, then prophylax against it. If you don't have that expectation, just proceed as a normal person until it comes up, and then prophylax or not prophylax, and then treat it by clarifying. So my general approach is I assume that, unless I have reason to otherwise, I'm just going to ask the question. If it becomes clear that, there's going to be some clarity memes, there's going to be some vagueness memes when the person's, giving the answer, then yes, I'm going to do all the vagueness meme treatment to get clarity, to deal away with that headache. If I have background knowledge that a person is a vagueness memer to NTT, then yes, I'm gonna before I even ask the question, I'm gonna just prophylax. And I would give the same advice to people being asked by NTTers. Like if you know you're being asked by someone who's going to do that sort of strategy, then yes, ask. Like I would say, okay, well, what degree of clarity are you asking? If, however, you don't have reason to believe that, just answer the question like a normal person until it comes up. If it comes up, then you ask.
Yeah, I mean, none of that was in my criticism, so sure.
Okay, so you're just criticizing like some vegans in the wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the most part. I mean, I might target particular people, but yeah, that really had nothing to do with what I wrote.
Okay. All right. So then I think that we're in agreement then. I don't think that there's any criticisms on myself, Isaac, or like at least in any of these comments, or like in like the server norms here. So if that's
clarification, do you want to? You had a third point, right?
Oh, the third thing is just like, yeah, the third thing is I think that you should resolve things with Isaac about that ban thing. I think you should, the whole making the alt things, and I'll tell you why. I mean, I'll go through the reasons why. I think what I think you should do is I think you should apologize for making those alts to go into that server in violation of the rules, and just say you're not going to do it. And just mean if you actually mean you're sorry about it, then apologize. And then if you actually won't do it again, then don't do it, and say you won't do it again. And then just rejoin the Ask Yourself server. And and the reasons for that are a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's the right thing to do. Number two, I think it's going to solve a lot of future fucking headaches about this in the future, because it's very annoying. I'm not saying this is something you've intended to do, but it's very annoying to have like this sort of like different circles of communities where, there's a lot of crosstalk and a lot of clarity, where like a conversation like this could have just ended like years of like issues, like years of like non-clarity where something could have, like, just generally, if I have an issue with what someone says, I would always prefer to like just message them and talk to them about it. And if there's something that's getting in the way with that, then and if it's something that like I violated the rules of the server, okay, like sorry, I violated the rules of the server, won't do it again. And now this gives me access to that person. I can say, okay, well, if I have a clarifying question or if I have an issue, I'm just going to message you. Like it could happen, you can go in your inbox, message, you want to talk about this, talk about it, instead of like having these like wikis or having these like communities, like these other Discord servers where everyone's talking shit. And then like, of course, everyone's view is like being misrepresented in some way. And, like all of this shit is happening. And then, somehow, some way I'm in the middle of like playing telephone in sometimes. And it's like, it's just a whole fucking mess. It's a headache and a half. So
I'd like to respond to all that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so first, alts, no. One alt, yes.
Okay.
I didn't put any more alts in there. Two, I'm not really sorry. I can't honestly say that. The third thing is that I've never blocked Isaac. Isaac's free to come and talk to me anytime he wants. Right? Like any of the stuff that happened has never actually stopped him from talking to me. He bans me. I don't ban him. So.
Yeah, can I just say something because here's the thing. There's like a principle here. It's just that
he has his principle.
No. The principle is that we don't, and no, I have the same principle. It's like I don't want someone to, like, having a productive conversation is great, and doing this is great, but I don't want that to be like an established norm about avoiding like a ban in some way, or like avoiding avoiding server bans. It's like it's a shame, like, or avoiding like a way of avoiding what someone might in principle, like if someone in principle is like, okay, you violated my server norms, you made an alt to subvert some sort of, like, you made a sock account to subvert this. I normally wouldn't talk to you, and I think there's value in you getting clarity by talking to him if something comes up, but I don't want that to be leveraged against these principles of like not wanting to talk to you or not wanting to keep you in these servers, if because that's leveraged against those principles. So and if you look, if you really are not sorry about doing that, then I don't know what to say. I think that was kind of a shitty thing to do, and look, maybe you don't see it that way, and that's fine. But I don't want to send a message that, and like, not both Isaac and I don't want to send a message that that's the sort of thing that would be a way to, that this is like having conversations like this, which I appreciate, and I like that we got to agreement. I like that we had a productive conversation, but I don't want to send a message that having a productive conversation is a way to subvert that sort of thing, to subvert and get into.
You invited me. I didn't ask.
No. I did. I listen. No, I agree. I'm happy I did. In terms of no, I'm just saying that in terms of keeping you here, then yes, I will. It's like, I hate to invite you and kick you out, but I guess I don't see what else to do here, because I don't want to send that message. So, because I do want my server and the AY server to be on the same page about those sorts of things, and I don't want to send a message that that's the sort of thing I'm okay with, or it's the sort of thing to subvert. But I think it's a real shame. I'll just say I do think it's unfortunate, because I think that a lot of annoying headaches would have been avoided if you were to just actually be sorry about just making a fucking sock account and going against a server rule. Well, I guess not.
There's other what ifs, isn't there? Right? A lot of headaches would have been resolved if he comes to my server and talks to me. Right?
Yeah.
Same.
Yes, there's a lot of counterfactuals. Yes, I don't think he went to your server and violated the rules of your server, though. I think you went to his server and violated the rules of his server. So
yeah. Yes. I don't respect his rules. I don't respect his server.
Okay, I that's clear. So Okay, I think so. That's the sort of thing I think is a shame. I think if you just go to his server and just not respect the server rules, and I think that's a reasonable rule. I think not making sock accounts is not an unreasonable rule. So, I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, all right, but I so that
I'm not
sucks.
saying it's
It's
an unreasonable
unfortunate.
rule either, right?
I'm sorry.
I'm not saying that's an unreasonable rule.
So
Like
why are
you
but you're
could have just cause to get
right?
rid of it. It's just that I don't respect the server enough to care about his rules.
Okay. Well, I think that is unfortunate. I think that's I think a lot of annoyance and headache could be avoided just by you two, if you have any criticism, just fucking talking to each other
He doesn't.
instead
I
of.
don't think he would want to talk to me anyway.
And now I see why. If you're saying you don't respect his server rules and everything like that, why would I want to? Why would someone who you don't respect or you don't respect their rules want to talk to you? I get it. Yes, he doesn't want to talk to you.
That's fine. I have no interest in really talking to him either.
I'm just, I get it. I'm just expressing. I understand. I'm just expressing, the frustration and annoyance because, and I hope you could at least understand that because, just broadly, I think there's a lot of disutility that could be avoided here. I think there's a lot of confusion that could be avoided if the two of you were to just, and there is a pathway for you to just talk to fucking each other. You don't have an interest in doing that clearly, but and I'm sure you can say he doesn't have interest in taking pathways to talk to you. That's fine. But the point is, yeah, I mean, the point here is just that it's very unfortunate that this is not going to happen because there is a lot of stupid confusion and needless confusion and crosstalk and misrepresentation that happens because of this.
I completely agree, and it is annoying. But I mean, this isn't your guys' server isn't some big part of my life or anything. It doesn't really matter that much to me.
It's not about you being well. That's a secondary. It's not about you, being in this her server. How much of a part of your life the server is. The main thing is that it's more about like philosophical confusion over, any like
No, I'm saying
things that.
like, if you guys are confused about my positions, that's not a big deal to me.
No, I don't think that's even the issue. I think that more of the issue is that no, that I don't think is the issue. I think really the issue is just, sometimes like a lot of, Andes or normies are reading things that you say, and then they have some confused impression of NTT, and then then they go to us and link some things here, and then they say, okay, well, this is not our view, and then they'll just like, you may be frustrated by people who say, oh, this is what Avi's doing. You probably would be frustrated by people saying, oh, this is what ShadowStarshine is doing, and
right. But
and then,
you are completely free, and so is Ask Yourself, to clarify anything you want with me. DM,
yeah, no, I get it.
whatever, and post it online, post it in your servers.
Yes, I get it. Yes, I'm not. Yes, I get it. No, I get all that. I'm proposing you an easier way of doing that avoids a whole bunch of middlemen. That's all I was. So all I was doing was proposing that instead of living in two different bubbles, where you have all of these normie Andes being a third party, and then until it gets frustrating enough to that someone has to make a public clarification and shit, is just it would be nice if you could take a step and resolve, given you're the one who violated the server norms, take a step and try to make amends on that, or try to at least make good on that, so that you have an easier access to him, so that this bubble thing doesn't happen in the future. Now you've expressed that.
It sounds like this bubble thing is a bigger problem for you than it is for me.
Well, so yeah, well, okay, maybe maybe you're fine with it. Listen, maybe you're fine with the confusion that's happening. Yes, I am annoyed at it, and I'll tell you why I'm annoyed at it. Because it's a fucking headache, because people link me this shit. And I have a correction impulse. Like when I see bullshit going on, it's annoying for me to just ignore it. Like it's there's some sort of drive in me like, no, that's not what we're doing. I want to clarify that. And then it happens again and again and again. And yes, maybe it's not such a problem for you. Maybe you're cool with that, with the sort of misrepresentation that's going on because of this bubble shit. But at least from my perspective, what I think would be a more productive approach, maybe you disagree, is for two people to just fucking talk to each other if they have any issue clarifying.
That's not being prevented. Like, you guys want it one way.
Well, there is a
Yeah, you want to.
we want yes.
And
There is a yes.
Asian norm is the highest norm.
But
And
that
if
is
that's more important to you than getting the clarity that you want for all these annoying people, then that's your prerogative.
well. That's well. Just to be clear to your guys, like I am clearly. It's not. That's not clearly in terms of me. I am engaging with you. I am not even the person who. I am not even the primary person. I'm the fucking middleman here, and I'm engaging with you because
I'm ask yourself if it's more important to ask yourself to keep up his ban. Like, I won't talk to anybody who evades the ban. If that norm's more important to him than dealing with any of these people who come in confused, then that's his choice.
No, and that sure he could have that. He could certainly have that view because someone has violated his his norms. I don't think it's unreasonable to have a view that he doesn't want to deal with someone who violates their server rules. He's saying that, no, but you're not going to reply to him in the inbox because he's banned because he violated your server rules, Isaac. So that's the thing. And so yes, despite how much good it would do to clear up all the confusion, it's on principle. I think it's more on Shadow to at least make an effort to make good on that violation and then engage than just to expect Isaac to go against his principles there. So at least that's where I stand. You might disagree, but
sure, yeah. I just see this as a difference, right? Like I thought the first ban was completely ridiculous. The thing that I actually evaded was so stupid that like it's hard for me to respect anybody who would have banned me for that reason. And it's also hard for me to respect a server that, just renames people retards and all this other stuff. Like, I just don't respect the server. And that's all right. Just how it is.
Okay. Well, look, I have tried. I've tried to get this annoying headache out of the way. At least I hope that I could have clarified.
He's already. If you just look at like the sort of comments that are happening in your general chat,
just don't pay attention to chat. Like, I'm just trying to just pay attention to me.
You're saying I should join this sort of community. Like, there's some value for
community. I don't care about, like, it's not about the community. It's just about you talking to. All right, look, I think I'm trying to be as clear as I can. Look, if I have a criticism on someone else, like if I violated their server, at least where I'm coming, you may come from a different perspective. My sort of goal would be, I want to, is my correction impulses, I would want to reach out to that person and hash it out. And if the issue is I violated,
no. There's no way you're gonna just say, look, that's the simplicity of it. That if you have,
I'm not saying that's the simplicity. I get it.
That some norms are more important than reaching out to someone, and I have those as well. Ask yourself, have them? I have them.
Sure. So if you have,
we're in conflict. That's just what it is.
All right. Okay, I hear you. So look, I've tried my best on this. I've maybe not my best, but I think I've tried I've tried to resolve it. I have failed in doing so. You guys just have norms against each other, and that's a shame. The only thing I will just request going forward, then I'm happy I cleared this issue up. I'm happy we cleared this issue up about vagueness memes. So I hope people can reference this video instead of asking me about every vagueness thing. But yeah, just for my own benefit, just like tag me in less shit about this in terms of like being the middleman, because if this is going to be some like,
what am I tagging you in?
I'm not asking you. I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking the normie Andes. So like, if they see something that ShadowStarshine writes about any of this, like, don't use me as the middleman here to be the clarifying person, because it's too much work. I'm busy these days. I got better shit to do. And I have a correction impulse, and don't exploit my correction impulse. All right. So to the room. Yeah. But I think it's unfortunate. I do. And you may not you obviously don't share that. But anyway, I tried. But if there's anything else, then we'll finish.
Yeah, I just want to say you guys are always welcome to come hash out whatever you want with me if you're willing to go past whatever norms prevent you.
And you are always welcome to come hash it out and ask yourself with Isaac if you're willing to go against your norm of respecting the rules you violated.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. Well,
so am I on my way out then?
You, my friend, are about to be banned in 3, 2, 1, bye. Okay. All right, that's it. All right, have a good one, everyone. It's been real.
I was going to try to catch him for that Israel-Palestine. Wait a sec. Let's see if we